You'll get more than you expect with McValue at McDonald's. So when you've spent too much on a night out, get deals on the after party. When you've got date night, get deals on favorites that'll make you their favorite. And when you've got family for the weekend, we've got breakfast.
Buy one, add one for $1. Now with Sausage McGriddles and other breakfast favorites. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with combo meal. Valid for item of equal or lesser value. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Pacifico is a Mexican lager brewed to be discovered. It's like fresh tracks on a powder day. Like that uncharted trail a stone's throw away. Like the perfect wave on a sunny day. Pacifico. Find your own way. 21 plus. Drink responsibly. Imported by Crown Imports, Chicago, Illinois.
A warm and friendly hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by a good friend of ours, Nate Hornung. He does a tremendous job over at Your Betting News. He is better known as Shaggy Bets. He does a great job with the show Up Your Units as well. We're going to be joined by him to unpack what we've all seen thus far from Feast Week, some of the teams that he's feeling bullish/bearish on, the just overall outlook of the Big Ten, the way that they have gone out there and dominated, and then in the final segment, I'm going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Saturday as we hit some make shots. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, Larry Sam, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other way, that is via an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Well, I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today. Everything is powered by Better. That is BETR over at Better. They're making it easier than ever before to get in on some daily fantasy. All you do is go to BETR.app, put in the promo code of VSiNPod, VSINPOD. You get $10 free, and all you need to do, take a look at a player, determine whether or not they're going to go over or under their set. If you're in a jurisdiction that allows it, there's some money lines and some totals out there as well. That varies from state to state, but they're making it easier than ever before to be able to get in the game. And now let's get into the game. Take a look at everything that we saw on Friday, take a look at the trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
In the big game of the day, UConn takes down Illinois 74-61. Illinois just 29 points in the second half as they go 6 of 29 from three-point range. Tomislav Ivicic looked a little bit closer to 100%, 11 points, 10 rebounds, and Colin Boswell did his best. He gave the team 25 points, but not a lot doing off the bench. And Terrace Reed, he returned to action. He clearly was not himself. He picked up 4 fouls, 2 points, 5 rebounds, but he did give the team a little bit of a lift as UConn won that rebound battle 43-38. And for UConn, 10 of 28 from 3. Not great, not terrible, but Malachi Smith off the bench, how about him being able to, in 24 minutes, give the team 14 points, 9 assists. He was 3 of 3 from 3, and solo ball, well, he was a solo top scorer in this game. He was able to supply 15 points for Purdue. They are the current number 1, and they are not doing anything to really knock themselves. Michigan was really good, and we'll talk a little bit more about that with Nate Hornung in the next segment, but 109-62, they got the job done and then some. They win, they cover this game, they get the over, they go 11 of 23 from three-point range. Fletcher Lawyer, 4 of 4 from the outside, 15 points. Daniel Jacobson off the bench in 18 minutes at 9 rebounds and 24 points. Purdue wins the turnover battle 17-10. They win the rebound battle 37-17. Just complete and utter domination there, but might not be number 1 after what Michigan was able to do over the weekend. And for BYU, they play a very high-scoring second half. This game had 66 points in the first half, goes over with BYU outscoring Dayton in the second half 53-43, and BYU was down 6 points at the half. They find a way to get the job done 83-79 out there in lovely Florida. And for BYU, you had AJ DeManza give you 18 points, but overshadowed by Robert Wright being Mr. Wright, 6 assists, 23 points, and Richie Saunders, how about 29 points for Saunders, 6 of 10 from 3. BYU as a whole, they go 10 of 22 from the outside, and they held in there. They went 15 of 33 from 3. Javon Bennett, 22 points, 6 of 11 from the outside. Bryce Hurd, well, you heard that he was coming off the bench, and he gave the team 16 points, 4 of 5 5 from 3, but for Dayton, they're unable to win the rebound battle 35-32, and they shot better from the three-point arc than they did at the free throw line. 6 of 14 at the free throw line. That's the reason why they lost this game. For Vanderbilt, big giant statement here against St. Mary's. 96-71. They had 51 points at the half. For Vanderbilt, 8 of 19 from three-point range. Duke Miles was the Duke of this game. He was able to supply the team with 25 points. For Vanderbilt, they win the turnover battle 16-7, by the way. And for St. Mary's, you did have Paulus Marsukis do a solid job giving you 24 points. But for Vanderbilt, they did a nice job dominating this game. And they even won the rebound battle by a count of 34-30. So very nice sound win by Vanderbilt. This was a rock-solid win as well, one that was much needed for Florida. Now, closing numbers will tell you whether or not you got the over or the under. On the opener, you got the over. If you took the close, you might not have. And for anyone that took Providence at plus 12.5 or plus 13 on the close, you just barely got there. This was a final of 90-78, so always be trying to be able to get those openers. And for Providence, they went 6 of 16 from three-point range, and a lot of Florida team has been awful from three-point range. You go 12-33 from the outside, and Urban Klavzar off the bench, 18 points. He was rock solid. Xavier Lee, Boogie Flan, probably their best game as a tandem. A combined 37 points, 7 assists between the two of them with only 3 turnovers. And for Florida, they win the rebound battle by a count of 42-37. Thomas Haw, 12 rebounds. Ruben Chinyelu, 10 rebounds. And for Providence, off the bench, Jason Edwards was able to give the team 13 points. In terms of unranked teams, you saw VCU absolutely take it to Virginia Tech, 86-68 the final. This game had a 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time tip, and the two teams really shot it well from 3. 7-16 for Virginia Tech, 11-21 for VCU, so if you, like me, banked on the under, that was a little bit brutal, but for VCU, really nice performance here off the bench from Terrence Hill. He goes for 21 points, 5 of 5 from three-point range. VCU does lose a turnover battle by a count of 14-13, but won the rebound battle 36-28 as for Virginia Tech, you had Jaden Shuett off the bench, supply the team with 15 points, but the star in Nicolas Avadeus, just 8 points, needed a little bit more out of him, so VCU, they get a nice resounding win, and for Gardner-Webb, they just continue to lose. They're now 0-8. They lose 76-68 against Southeast Louisiana, dependent upon your number if you got the cover there or not, and Alcorn State, they're out of the losers column. They get their first win as a moneyline underdog. They take down Indiana State 81-74 the final. As for Indiana State, they shoot just 38% from the floor, 6 of 29 from three-point range, and Alcorn State actually won the rebound battle 43-33. So, yay, verily, that is the first win for Jake Morton. Cleveland State gets the cover after falling down 23-0 against Missouri. It was looking not so great to say the least, but Dennis Gates against his former team, well, his former team was able to hold in there. As for Cleveland State, 11-29 from three-point, just 11-38 for Missouri, but a nice resounding win regardless, as Jacob Cruz off the bench was able to give the team 20 points. And then you had Sebastian Mack, Mark Mitchell, Luke Norweather, and Anur Boateng all give you exactly 10 points. No more, no less than 10 points. And then you saw Xavier get a nice convincing win, 88-67, as it appears as though the Patino Aaron Xavier is starting to get a little bit better. They go 12 of 28 from three-point range, and they only turned the ball over 5 times in this game, so that was pretty rock solid for them. What else was pretty rock solid? Drake being able to hold in there against LSU. LSU entered in the day number 1 in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Drake is able to get the cover as about a 12 or so point underdog, 71-62 the final. LSU just 5 of 19 from three-point range, but they did control the boards. They won the rebound battle 41-34, and for the Drake, they only go 8 of 30 from 3, but Jashawn Thomas kept them lively, 16 points. He goes 4 of 6 from 3. Jalen Quinn, 20 points, 6 boards. He went 2 of 3 from three-point range. The rest of the team didn't necessarily do a ton, and Dedan Thomas, 18 points for LSU, so that was able to uplift them. Georgia Tech out there in the Emerald Classic, they entered in the day number 2 in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but offense leaving something to be desired. DePaul was able to take them down 75-62 as DePaul outscored Georgia Tech 50-29 at the half, and for Georgia Tech, a nice whopping 2 of 18 from three-point range. They played even up on the glass, but DePaul won the turnover battle 11-10, and for DePaul, they had on their side Landon Blocker, who blocked Georgia Tech from getting a win. He had 18 points, 4 boards, 4 assists, so really nice performance out there. And Pittsburgh, they had themselves a nice win as a money line underdog. They do get the job done against Ohio State, 67-66. There was a buzzer beater to be able to get the job done for Pittsburgh, as you had Devin Royal be very, very royal for Ohio State in this one. He was able to supply the team with 22 points, but unfortunately, on the side of Pittsburgh was DeMarco Minor, who came a very, very major, a 3 at the buzzer to be able to win it for Pittsburgh, as Pittsburgh wasn't necessarily shooting at the world's greatest in this game, 5 of 22 from 3. They were 4 of 21 prior to that 3, but Minor, he was major, 3 of 8 from distance. That means that the rest of the team, they went a nice hearty 2 of 14 from 3-point range, but 18 points out of him, and for Pittsburgh, they win the rebound battle, 39-38, but they really were able to control this game with the turnover battle. 13 turnovers for Ohio State, just 5 for Pittsburgh. So the Panthers, they get a nice upset and they do get the job done. Also being able to get the job done. How about what we saw from Jackson State in terms of getting their first win? 51-45. It's looking like it's going to be a really, really, really long year for Louisiana, as Jackson State, out of 365 Division I teams, entering this day 365th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Louisiana, they had 16 made field goals and they had 16 turnovers. So that's not great to say the least. This was rock solid for Butler, though. They get down 32-29 at the half, but they outscore Wright State in the second half 65-37, 94-69 the final. Butler is able to cover that very, very large number, and for Butler, you had Michael Ajay have another nice game in this one. He had 20 points, 8 boards for Butler. They win the turnover battle 13-11. They go to 7-21 from 3-point range and 15 out of 26 at the charity stripe, but they controlled the glass, winning that battle by a count of 41-30. So Butler, after it was looking a little bit murky for them early, they do find a way to be able to get that cover, and finding a way to be able to get a cover and a win as well. Oklahoma, for Marquette, they shot 5 of 7 from 3-point range to begin the game. They end the game 9 of 27 from 3-point range, 75-74. Oklahoma does find a way to get the job done as Nigel Pack backed it in. He had for the team 24 points, and for Marquette, their lifeblood is being able to generate turnovers. They only had 5 themselves, but they only forced Oklahoma into 8 turnovers, and Oklahoma, though they do lose the rebound battle 37-33, they did a nice job holding Marquette to only shooting about 40% from the floor. Chase Ross had 21 points, Nigel James had 20 points. The rest of the team around him just was unable to contribute too much, so Oklahoma able to get the job done with a nice quality win there. UNC Wilmington just absolutely romped Navy, by the way, 87-57. I recognize that Navy might not be monsters at the midway, but that was a nice sound performance. South Carolina got a scare from Charleston Southern. No cover for South Carolina, 74-62. They do get the outright win, but Charleston Southern hangs in there despite going just 7 of 31 from 3, and Charleston Southern won the rebound battle 43-37. Some concerns here for South Carolina. Elijah Strong, 22 points off the bench, was able to bail them out, but a little bit of a less than savory performance there, though. South Carolina did win the turnover battle by a count of 10-5 in that game as well, and this was a very savory performance as you were able to get a very nice convincing win from Virginia, 94-69. They were all over Queens NC in this one, and this was also a game that I thought was very intriguing. Colorado, 81-68 over Washington. Colorado really had some do-or-die situations in their first few games, but things seem to be coming alive for them. 8 of 18 from 3-point range for Colorado. Now, you've got Washington deal with a Heinz Steinbach injury, but for Colorado, they win the rebound battle 42-33, and they got off the bench Alan Michelli to be able to give you 12 points. You had a nice performance out of Isaiah Johnson, who was able to supply 13 points as well. So for Colorado, a good win for them, and right now they're 7-0, so they are finding a way to be able to get the job done time and time again, and being able to get the job done with Texas A&M. They blow out Florida State 95-59 the final. And Florida State, they take over 50% of their shots from 3, so they live by it and they die by it, and boy did they die. 9 of 41 from 3-point range. They lost the rebound battle 60-40 as for Texas A&M. Rashawn Agee, 17 points, 17 rebounds. You don't see too many 17 and 17 double-doubles, and right now Ruben Dominguez has been their top scorer. He supplied the team with 21 points, and for Texas A&M, a sizzling 15 out of 34 from 3-point range. Nice, good performance there. Nice performance from Clemson as well. They just completely blow out Alabama A&M 92-56 final in that one. And then we had an entertaining one between SMU and Mississippi State. SMU in overtime. They go on the road. They get the job done against Mississippi State 87-81 the final. And for Mississippi State, they actually cleaned it up with the turnovers. 7 turnovers after they were really struggling with that. But under Chris Chance, they've never been a great three-point shooting team. Just 8 of 28 from the outside. Jaden Epps was able to supply the team with 21 points, but SMU won the battle on the glass, 50-40, and Jaron Pierre, 24 points. Kevin Miller, I refuse to call him Boopy, but boy, did he make the Mississippi State Bulldogs go boop into a loss. 28 points, 9 boards. He was rock solid in this game as well, and SMU wins this game despite the fact that they went just 8 of 27 from three-point range. Now, because I do have to have this up at midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern, I am not able to tell you the exact final from Hawaii, but right now as I'm recording this, Hawaii is up over 20 points on North Dakota, and I am noticing in these Hawaii games that the whistle is very much going in their favor, so I want to be noting that. And do note that Colorado State is a very for-real team. 83-68, they hold down a South Florida team that's been a top 10 team in terms of total possessions per game. South Florida just 8 of 31 from 3, and for Colorado State, 16 out of 22 from 3, with Josh Passarelli going 8 of 8 from 3. And then off the bench, you had Jace Butler be able to go 3 of 3 from the outside. Now, Colorado State also had 15 turnovers in order to be able to get those good looks, and South Florida only had 9. So I would say don't count on Colorado State shooting over 70% from 3 on a night in, night out basis, but still a resounding performance. And for Miami, they blew the doors off of Georgetown. 78-65 was the final, and frankly was not this close. Miami got up 41-20 at the half, and for Miami, they did a solid job being able to win the battle on the glass 33-31, and Georgetown had Caleb Williams go 5 of 10 from 3. Problem was the rest of the team went a nice hearty 2 of 16 from three-point range, and for Miami, they didn't attempt a lot of threes, but they made the ones that they took. 6 of 10 from the outside. Malik Renew, 3 of 3 from 3, and he renewed a victory for this team. He was able to supply the team with 23 points, so there was a lot of great basketball on Friday, and this is with the Hawaii game pending, but if you're looking trend-wise at college basketball, right now the under is hitting at darn near 51%, 585 unders to 566 overs. Money line underdogs have been having a little bit of a rough go, but as favorites have been covering a lot of spreads. The favorites running at 51%, 587, 563, and 14 against the spread, as Feast Week was very kind to favorites. And on Friday, excluding the Rainbow Warriors game, which it looks like they're going to be able to cover that one, favorites, they went 26, 22, and 1 against the spread, and the unders hit at about 56.2%, 27 unders to 21 overs. So that's where we're seeing college basketball right now, and that's where we're all getting trend-wise. Coming up next, how about if we do chat with our good friend Nate Hornung, who does great work over at Your Betting News right here on Coast Coast Hoops, with myself, Greg H. Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Daily Podcast.
When you give gifts, you like to knock them out of the park. Airwick Essential Mist Diffuser's chic design, long-lasting scents, and effortless setup makes it the kind of gift that feels complete the moment it's unwrapped. Perfect for your favorite dinner party host or that friend who loves a cozy night in. Plus, its cordless design means you can easily take this gentle fragrance with you from room to room. Airwick Essential Mist. Ready to gift. Ready to uplift.
Are you looking to get an inside edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSIN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word, .com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here live lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Eaps Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast, and it's always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Nate Hornung aboard. You know him better as Shaggy Bets, as he does an absolutely incredible job over at Your Betting News. Additionally, I know that he's doing a great job with the show Up Your Units with our good friend Kobe Marcio. He's locked in on a little bit of everything, doing an incredible job, taking a look at all that we've got in college basketball, and you're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at Shaggy Bets. And Nate, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Hey, appreciate you having me on, Greg. Happy to be here.
It is great to have you aboard, and my friend, it has been a wild last few weeks in college basketball, and we had ourselves a great feast week. And just what have been some of your takeaways from the last few days? Because for me personally, I know you're a man that has some Midwest roots, and I am someone that is from the great state of Wisconsin. I am just very, very impressed by the Big Ten in terms of teams not named Oregon right now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, one of those Big Ten teams that's got my eyes just wide open as the Michigan Wolverines. What Dusty May and that crew did during the Players Era Festival, just running through anyone in their way. I expected a little more fight from Gonzaga in that championship game, but they could not get anything done. And the Wolverines look very, very strong going forward, as does the rest of the Big Ten.
Yep, and I think that that's a great debate as well as who the top team in all of college basketball is, because Purdue has not done anything to really lose that title. They take down Alabama. They've been able to take care of business where they're supposed to be taking care of business. A nice win over Texas Tech as well, but in the way that Michigan is looking is very rock solid. Houston does lose that game, so obviously they need to go down the pecking order a little bit, but you've got an Arizona team with an impressive resume as well, and I think that we're in for a year where, unlike last year where it felt like Auburn was that clear number 1/number 2 along with Duke, and then it was everyone else, I think that we might be looking at like 3, 4, maybe even 5 teams at the top, and then sort of like a big tier number 2 after those maybe 4 or 5 teams, with 1 or 2 trying to be able to decipher themselves to go along with the likes of Purdue and Michigan.
Oh, yeah. You kind of talked about it last year. Auburn was just head and shoulders on top of the world pretty much all season long. You had Houston up there as well, and eventually Florida ended up on top. But those were the clear cut all year long. This year, it seems like we're going to have a little bit of more discrepancy, to be quite honest with you. And I like what you said there with the kind of that big meat in the middle with that tier 2. Yes, there are maybe 5 top teams head and shoulders above the rest. But in that tier two, you've got really stacked Michigan team, a good BYU team. Gonzaga's down there, Illinois, St. John's. You've got talent all over.
Vanderbilt, anybody.
Exactly. As well, winning the battle for Atlantis. Go Commodores. But it's just going to be a great college basketball season. You've got a lot of talent all spread out across the country. And I think teams are going to be battling for that number 1 spot. I don't think we'll have a clear cut all season long like we did last year with Auburn.
I agree with you, and we're talking about a lot of these top teams, and do you think that that could lead to a little bit of overreaction in terms of what we've seen over the last few weeks? Because sometimes when you see a team win like the Maui Invitational, you see a team win the Battle for Atlantis. Now, we've got ourselves the Players Era Festival. A lot of times you do see some of these teams fall off a little bit. Sometimes it's just a coming out party in general, and they just keep on running. Like we saw Auburn win in Maui, and from there, they were just able to ascend. But I always find that to be interesting because I do think that now could be a good time to see positive progression for teams that have struggled and negative regression for teams that maybe have played above their skis a little bit too.
Right. We got a good feel of, kind of what these teams are. These multi-team events, this feast week tournaments, they bring out the best in all these teams. And we finally get to see teams that have maybe coasted along their first 4 or 5 games of the season, finally get to play someone of equal caliber. And yes, they either get exposed or they show us that they're the real deal. So I'm looking forward to it. I love targeting future bets kind of in this time frame, just maybe teams that I believe in but might think they will lose a big game. For example, that Michigan-Gonzaga game. I really want some stake in Michigan to cut down the nets in March, but I was expecting them to lose that game to Gonzaga, hoping to snag a better number on their future. It's not very playable in my eyes anymore, but we do get to see the best of teams. We're 5-7 games through the season, starting to see kind of what these teams are made of.
Absolutely, and you talked about with Michigan, perhaps the just boat has left the dock in terms of being able to get in on their futures, but is there maybe a team or two other than Michigan that you're targeting right now? Either you played a future on them, or maybe you're waiting for them to have that slip-up or two to be able to dive in on them.
Yeah, actually, one of my favorite futures that I've got sitting in my back pocket on the Illinois, the Fighting Illini, actually snagged them at 40-1 preseason. That number's long gone, but you can still find it, I think, in the 20-25-1 range. But
and with the loss of UConn, that'll come back down.
Well, exactly, right? 100%, which is what I was talking about. I think this Illinois team is stacked. They got a great leader from Champaign and Kylan Boswell, and he is just, surrounded by talent. Andrei Stojakovic showing out as a true scorer, just like his father was in the NBA. And, the Illini, they've been dealing with some injury issues. Tomislav Ivičić still not 100% on the court like they need him to be. So once they get all those pieces back, I think Illinois is very, very talented. I think they'll be one of the best teams in the country this year. So 40-1 on the Illini. I really like having that one in my back pocket right now.
Absolutely. I think that's a great call by you. And I do think that Illinois is going to be one of those top teams in the Big Ten. And I mean, that just speaks to it as well. We talked about perhaps two of the top three teams in all of college basketball being Michigan along with Purdue. And we don't talk as much about Illinois and then Michigan State as well. That's a team that needs to be in the discussion for top five as well. They do a nice job of taking down North Carolina. They're not getting as budget as the Wolverines right now because it's a little bit more defense. They're not a team that shoots as well from three, but I believe this is one of the best Tom Izzo teams that he's got yet, and it just embodies exactly what Michigan State is. Not necessarily a lot of flash, but a lot of substance and a lot of rough and tumble.
Oh, absolutely. They play sound, fundamental basketball up in East Lansing, and I mean, you said it, 3 huge ranked wins already this year over Arkansas, Kentucky, and North Carolina. They got a tough test against the Iowa coming up. They've got Duke on the horizon as well. But yeah, this Spartan squad looks very, very good. They, dismantled a Kentucky team that sure was without a couple of pieces, but on a neutral site, you would have thought Mark Pope and company would have put up more of a fight. And then you just taken down Carolina, showing them who was boss. And you said it, they're not flashy. They're not overly impressive from downtown. They just get the job done, plain and simple. So yeah, Michigan State, definitely a team that's going to be talked about for a long time to come this season.
Yep, it's going to be a lot of fun to see that, as we do have Nate Hornung, better known as Shaggy Betts, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And I'm so glad that you talked about Big Ten play, because coming up next week, we actually get some Big Ten play. We've got a few other smaller conferences, like typically, if I'm not mistaken, the Horizon League, the Metro Atlantic, you get a few conference games there as well. Do you take a look at these conference games in early December a little bit different than you will in January and February? Because it just doesn't feel like it has the same feel when you have these Big Ten games in early December as opposed to after the turn of the new year.
Oh, no, you absolutely said it. These early December conference games, a little different than, heat of conference season, late January, early February, when everything's getting going. So, yeah, I think Michigan State maybe getting a little bit of a gift, getting this Iowa team out of the way early. They don't see them again the rest of the season, so they can focus elsewhere. But, yeah, these early conference games in early December, I try to be careful. Let's put it that way. I try to be careful, a little bit more conservative, not getting overly aggressive, because sure, we have seen these teams in non-conference play. We've maybe seen them against other, Power 5 opponents, but conference play is just a different animal. You've got rivalries in there. You've got teams with, holding vendettas against the other. It's just a whole mess. So yeah, I will be a little more cautious during these conference games in December than I would be in January or February.
Oh, absolutely. And I do think that it's going to be interesting to take a look at those games as we have them coming up within the next few days to go along with the ACC versus SEC challenge. So even though Feast Week might be coming to an end, still a lot of great hoops coming up, as Nate Hornung, better known as Shaggy Betts, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And when it comes to the Saturday card in college basketball, we still have a few TBDs as we're doing this with regards to games in lovely Las Vegas and the Emerald Coast Classic, but feels like it's a lot of steak, not necessarily a lot of sizzle. But are there a few games that are standing out that you might be taking a look at and might be providing a few better betting opportunities on?
One spot I've actually already bet it in the Ivy League, heading to the Yanatelli Center, where Dartmouth takes on the St. Peter's Peacocks at 1 o'clock Central tomorrow, getting us started early. And I'm going to be back in the under. I took under 144, had to pay minus 115 for it. But, Dartmouth is a team that loves to run, and they love to shoot threes. They're top 25 in pace. They're top 25 in three-point rate, but they drop all the way to 163rd in the country in terms of three-point percentage. So they're putting up a bunch of threes. They're not making a whole bunch of them. Now, St. Peter's, a team that is the opposite. They love to play very, very slow. I think they're going to control the pace of this game at home as well. They're also top 10 in turnovers forced. I think that's going to lead to tons of steals, leading to long, lengthy possessions for the Peacocks. They are also a team that's top 65 in three-point rate. They shoot up to 210th in three-point percentage. So maybe a lot of threes being shot in this game. I don't know how many are actually going to be going in the hoop, but the Peacocks, they've only had 2 games go over 70 possessions. I just don't think either of these offenses are too good to cover this number with as little possessions as I see in this game. So Dartmouth and St. Peter's under 144 is the first bet I've made for Saturday.
And how much do you just bank on tried and true teams with regards to just what they've shown in the past? Because I'm right there with you on the under in this game, because St. Peter's is right now well outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I think that they are going to get back to their defensive roots. And that's part of the reason why I backed James Madison as well as about an 11.5 to a 12-point underdog. They've really struggled on defense this year. They've actually shot it quite well from three-point range, but I think that they get back to the slower, more controlled style, and I think that they start to show that against James Madison on Saturday.
The Dukes are a team, that I've been backing a couple times this season. Actually won a couple bets on them against Towson and Florida International. So the Dukes got a little bit of a soft spot in my heart. So they got a tough one against George Mason. George Mason undefeated going into that game. I'm not sure I'll be on the Dukes this Saturday. I might just have to leave that one alone. But plus 11.5, that seems like a good number for you.
Yep, and with regards to that, I think that's going to be really interesting. And that total's in the mid-140s. I was certainly willing to back that under because George Mason, they are one of the top teams in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And like I was talking about James Madison, just at their core, I feel like they're a little bit more of a slow and controlled team as well. And how do you take a look at teams that are trying to turn over a little bit of a new leaf? And by that, I mean Stephen F. Austin, who year in and year out, we always know them as being a team that generates turnovers, but they're under year one of a new coach, Mr. Bruner, and they're not generating the same amount of turnovers as they would typically, and they face off against a UT Arlington team that's been utterly sloppy with the ball. I actually think that change in what Stephen F. Austin is doing lends a little bit of value to UT Arlington, because I think a lot of people still think of Stephen F. Austin as being a team under Brad Underwood and all those guys that generate turnovers, and it's just a different team this year.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, UT Arlington, a team that has some trouble taking care of the ball, but like you said, this Lumberjacks team, not the same that we've seen in the past. Now, UT Arlington does struggle to keep teams off the free throw line as well. I'm seeing them bottom 30.
And Stephen F. Austin shoots 60% of the free throw line.
Yeah, so maybe it won't come into play, right? If they get there and don't make them, it won't matter. But Stephen F. Austin, a team that struggles to get to the line anyways. So I would be willing to go with Arlington in this spot as well.
Yep, and that was part of the handicap as well, and I think that you're going to agree with me. Always handicapping free throw shooting percentage when you think the game is going to be tight, because I'm sure that you've had this happen so many times where you back a team, they're laying like 5.5 to 6.5 points, and then you look, it's like, oh, crud. I'm on a team that shoots less than 70% of the free throw line, and that's a bigger factor than what a lot of people think that it is, and I think that that's one of the biggest things to take a look at when you do get tighter spreads is free throw shooting percentage, whereas in like a north of 10-point spread, probably not going to come into play, because if you're going to late game fouling, you're probably not going to cover north of 10 anyway.
No doubt about it. But yeah, with those close spreads, man, there is nothing that irks me more than the guys missing free throws when I need them to make it.
I saw French at St. Louis back in the day.
Exactly, 100%. I mean, they're free. They're supposed to be free. You got to knock them down. And it really makes me mad when, it's the stud of the team that can't shoot free throws for whatever reason. He's got 20 points, he's got 10 boards, but he's sitting 3 of 7 from the free throw line. You got to make those free throws, especially in these close spread games as well. So yes, I definitely take into account a team's free throw percentage and sometimes a specific player. If I've kind of got a feel of who's going to be on the free throw line, who does that team like to get the ball to in those situations where they know they're going to be fouled. So yeah, free throw percentage, one of the main underrated stats in my book.
Yes, absolutely. Looking at you, Memphis, during the 2006-7 season with Derrick Rose at the helm, and not being able to knock down free throws. That costed them a national championship. So always something to take note of. And you want to take note of the fact that you, Nate, are doing such amazing work over at Your Betting News, the show Up Your Units, and so much more. So love to give people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yep, absolutely. You can follow me on all social platforms at Shaggy_bets. Like Greg said, I'm host of a podcast with my good friend Kobe Marshall, Up Your Units. That's Monday through Fridays, 11 to 12 Central every single day on the Betting News YouTube. And you can find all my scribbles at bettingnews.com.
Absolutely. And Nate, he's doing such an incredible job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. And every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights. So big thanks to Nate for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And up next, I get you guys picks and analysis for every game on the betting board for this college basketball Saturday as we hit some big shots.
When you give gifts, you like to knock them out of the park. Airwick Essential Mist Diffuser's chic design, long-lasting scents, and effortless setup makes it the kind of gift that feels complete the moment it's unwrapped. Perfect for your favorite dinner party host or that friend who loves a cozy night in. Plus, its cordless design means you can easily take this gentle fragrance with you from room to room. Airwick Essential Mist, ready to gift, ready to uplift.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Always great to be joined by Nate Hornung, better known as Shaggy Bets. He does great work over at Your Betting News, the show Up Your Units. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights, and he did so once again today. So a big thanks to Nate for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Saturday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at gunit_81, and we are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with pretty much the games not involving big time tournaments, and then you've got the Resorts World Tournament, the Emerald Coast Tournament, and then the extra games involve teams from these conferences: the MEAC, the SWAC, the Atlantic Sun, the America East, the Southland, if I haven't said so already, the Northeast Conference, and the Patriot League. So it is convoluted. I always put the order in the games that I go in the show notes /on Twitter/X at gunit_81 to be able to keep things a little bit more orderly. But that said, let's get things started with 679, 680 on the card. Niagara is going to be playing us to Detroit. Detroit is anywhere between a 1.5 point favorite to a 1.5 point underdog. So we're seeing dueling favorites out there with a total between 144.5 to a 146.5, and I did set a total of a 140.5. I'm in on the under. You've got two teams that are really not pushing a lot of tempo now. For Niagara, well outside the top 290 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Detroit's been a little bit better, but it's been a little bit less than savory for them. But Detroit not going to be playing at warp speed by any stretch of the imagination. Currently, in terms of total possessions per game, they're checking in about 88th in the country, but I think that that's a little bit of a byproduct of the competition. And with regards to this Niagara team, under Greg Paulus, they just have never ranked 319th in the country. And for Detroit, I did set them here as a favorite of 2.5 points. So whether they're as a money line underdog or a very slim favorite, I am going to be in on them because with Detroit, you just have a little bit more down low. Niagara just never does a great job on the glass, back outside the top 300 with regards to rebound percentage. And it's not like this is an amazing rebounding team. As a matter of fact, Jaquel Cotton for Detroit is right now your top rebounder with 4.5 rebounds per game, but you do have a do-it-all guy in Orlando Lovejoy, 3.5 assists, 12.5 points. Last year, he was okay from three-point range. He has yet to make a three thus far this season, but TJ Nadeau has been able to shoot 40% from the outside. He's supplying 12 points. You're able to get about 4.5 boards, 11.5 points out of Aiden Carter, so they've been able to do a nice job there. And for this Detroit team, top 125 team, in terms of percentage of their missed shots, that result in an offensive rebound, and we should see an uptick with the fact that they're shooting 25.1% from three-point range for Niagara. This team is just getting cooked from the outside again this year. They're allowing teams to shoot 39.1% from three. They're outside the top 300 opponents' three-point shooting percentage last year. Bottom 10 team in the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage. They don't have a single guy on the roster that's giving you more than 4.2 rebounds per game, with Reggie Perdhome being able to give you 4.2 boards, 7.5 points per game, and they lost pretty much everything from a season ago as Justin Page. He's like the lone holdover. He's right now your top scorer with 12 points. He's been able to shoot only about 27.5% from three, but it's only about 2.5 assists per game. Now Niagara, they typically do a solid job of taking care of the ball, up to 14 turnovers this season. That's an even bigger black eye on this team. With Detroit, it's not like they're going to be monsters at the midway on the glass, and I think that this is going to be a pretty sad offensive game that's going to be slowed down. So set a total of a 140.5. I'm in on the under, but with Detroit, I think that they win the battle on the glass. I think that they're just a better all team. I set them as a 2.5 point favorite. We'll take them as a money line underdog / as a 1 to 1.5 point favorite. 681, 682 on the card. It is Central Florida. They play the VMI. VMI 23.5 to 24.5 point underdogs. The odds game between 160.5 to 161, and I did set Central Florida as a 25 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. VMI just has not been the same team without Ricky Bradley. Now they're getting really good production out of TJ Johnson. Johnson has been one of the better scores in all of college basketball this year. 20 points, 7.5 boards, 0.5 per contest, but team as a whole, they're shooting about 32.5% from 3-point range. You've had Tan Yizaglu do a nice job in terms of doling it out. He's given this team about 7 points, 3.5 assists per game, and for VMI, they do a nice job in terms of running pretty clean offense. They're only turning the ball over about 10.7 times per contest, but problem is they are really allowing it on defense. They're outside the top 250 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, well outside the top 250 with regards to rebound percentage as well. And Central Florida, which Michael Stilwell down low, they should really be able to control things. And I always like teams that they've got compound transfers, and you've got that with this Central Florida team, as you also bring in from UW Milwaukee along with Stilwell, Themis Folks, who's been able to do a nice job doling out clean offense, 7.5 assists, 10 points per contest. And then Riley Kugel, he had a really nice run a few seasons ago when he was over at Florida. He has ascended to shooting 54% from 3, which that's going to see a little bit of fall off, but 17.5 points, 3 assists per game. Jordan Burks has been able to give you 40% 3-point shooting. He's up to 12 points per game. Central Florida right now shooting 45% from 3. We'll see a little bit of a fall off there, but VMI doesn't necessarily do a great job in terms of being able to guard the arc. Now, this should be a higher scoring game because Central Florida, they themselves, well outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but they should very easily be able to control the board. Central Florida has been a top 55 team in terms of rebound percentage, with Stilwell leading the way with 8 rebounds per game, but you've also been able to get 5 rebounds per game out of Burks. John Bowles, someone that's 7 feet tall. He gives you a little bit down low with about 3.5 boards per game. And Devin Cambridge, who's been banged up throughout his career, as he gets healthier, he should be able to make a bigger impact as well. So did set Central Florida as a 25 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 24.5 with them, and on the over semi total at a 165. 683, 684 on the card. It is George Mason, and they're going to be playing us to James Madison. Our nation's 4th president, James Madison, is an 11.5 to a 12-point dog. So on this game, it's 145.5 to a 146. Now, had James Madison succeeded at the Battle of Trenton, he would be a favorite, like our friend George Washington. But that said, I did set James Madison as an 8-point dog. I'm going to be willing to take the points. I think James Madison gets back to their defensive roots. Right now, they're outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They've been shooting the tar out of the ball. They're shooting 41.7% from 3-point range. They've also sped themselves up a little bit from a season ago as well. 237th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but we saw that last year with Preston Spradlin's team. He had his team playing a little bit more up-tempo. They struggled in the first 6 or so games of the season, and then they slowed down and became a bottom 75 team with regards to possessions per game. I fully think that that's going to be the case here, so I decided a total of 138. I'm in on the under, but I think that the guard play keeps them lively. Cliff Davis, Bradley Douglas, they come in from mid-major stops. These two guys have been able to combine for about 26 points per game. You've got Davis shooting 37.5% from 3. You've had Douglas be able to dole out 4.5 assists per game, and Justin McBride has been doing a nice job of mixing and shaking. 15 points, 5 boards. Right now shooting 55% from 3. That's not going to be maintaining, but your main rebounder, Nighty Ricks, who has been in the Spradlin system so long that he came on over from Morehead St a few seasons ago, he's added a three ball. He's right now giving the team 41.7% from 3, 7.5 points, 7 rebounds per game. George Mason should be able to win the battle on the glass, as George Mason has been able to be a top 75 team with regards to rebound percentage. James Madison, they're right around about country average, hovering right around about 200th or so. And Corey Mincy has been tremendous for this George Mason team. He's right now giving the team 19 points, 3.5 assists per game. This team against D1 competition is shooting a little bit above 38% from 3. I think that there's going to be a skoge bit of a fall off, but Jari Long, who comes over from Maryland, beside Troutman from Northeastern, these two guys have been very good at the guard spot. They're combining for 25.5 points per game. They're combining to shoot about 50% from 3-point range as well, but I do think that even though George Mason is a solid team in terms of generating turnovers, top 175 unit, in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, that James Madison gets back to their defensive roots. This is a George Mason team that's currently ranking 29th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and George Mason is really looking to slow things down. 313th in terms of total possessions per game. I like the under here, set my total 138, and we'll take those points with James Madison. Set them as an 8-point dog. 685, 686 on the card. It is St. Peter's, and they're going to be playing with Dartmouth, and Dartmouth is an underdog of 1 to 1.5 points. 143 to 143.5 is the total, and with St. Peter's, I did set them as a favorite of 4 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay this number. I just have a tough time getting there with Dartmouth, a team that has done a nice job in terms of turning over a little bit of a new leaf with regards to their tempo. Dartmouth right now 103rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. With St. Peter's, you know that this team is not going to be necessarily a team that runs it and guns it. For St. Peter's, in terms of total possessions per game, they're actually up from where they have been in past years, but it's still not like they're playing at warp speed or anything like that. 279th in the country, and currently for St. Peter's, they're outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I think that this is going to be getting some improvement as they had to replace Mohamed So, the big man, in the offseason, but you've got Chakai Gupton, who's been able to give you about 5 boards, 6 points per game, so a little bit of versatility there. You return guys like Bryce Eaton along with Brett Bland from past seasons. Eaton has been eating it up with about 8 points, 4 assists per contest. Bland has been your top scorer with 17.5 points per game for a St. Peter's team that was actually relatively respectable with their 3-point shooting a season ago. Right now, they are outside the top 350 with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage. This is never going to be an amazing offensive team, but I do think that that improves, and the offensive rebounding is still there. They are still a squad that is in the top 75 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, and they've done a great job in terms of turning things sloppy as well. They're a top 55 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and with Dartmouth, they return a lot from a season ago, but they're missing that top scorer in Ryan Cornish, and that's led to them not being able to take care of the ball and losing the turnover battle. They're turning the ball over 4 times more than their opponents. They're outside the top 285 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. They are really bombing it from 3. They are attempting 33 threes per game, and they're shooting about 34.5% from the outside. Kareem Thomas has come out of nowhere. He's been their top scorer, 19.5 points, shooting 55% from 3. You bring back Brandon Mitchell-Day and Connor Amundsen from a season ago. They're combining for a little bit over 24 points, shooting in the mid-30s between the two of them from 3-point range, with Day being able to give you about 11 rebounds per game. And for Dartmouth, they're once again one of the best defensive rebound rate teams in all of college basketball. They're not allowing second chances, but those turnovers I think are going to be costlier. Set St. Peter's as a 4-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Think that you get a slow down game. Set my total at a 140, so I'm going to be in on the under. 687, 688 on the card. It is Georgia, and they play with Tennessee Tech. Tennessee Tech is a 33.5 point underdog. 158.5 to 159.5 is the total, and I set Georgia as a 29-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Tennessee Tech. With Georgia, have to think that the fact that they're shooting less than 20% from 3 is going to be improving a little bit. They're playing at warp speed. They're right now a top 20 team in terms of total possessions per game, and you've got a Tennessee Tech team that they're not necessarily known as being a team that just absolutely guns it, but I mean, they're not slow themselves. 142nd in terms of total possessions per game. I think the key for them holding in this game, the versatility of Mekhi Cameron, who's been in the system for multiple years, 12.5 points, 3.5 boards, shooting in the mid-30s from 3 for a team that as a whole. They're only shooting about 28.5% from 3-point range, but Tennessee Tech has been a top 125 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but sloppy with the ball. They are well outside the top 330 in terms of ball security. Georgia has been a top 20 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but reason to believe that this team won't get completely killed on the glass. Judge Juwan Nichols, Danny Pounds, Jacob Whitted have all been able to give between 5 to 5.7 rebounds per game. Brandon Muntu, who comes over from Western Michigan, has been able to give you 9.5 points as well, so they've been able to do an okay job with that regard. And for Georgia, they certainly do have the better backcourt play, as you've been able to have Blue Kane do a nice job supplying this team with double figures. You have to love what you've seen out of Jeremiah Wilkerson, who comes on over from Cal. He's done a bit of everything, 16 points, 2.5 steals. He's right now only shooting about 30% from 3-point range, but this is not necessarily a team that's going to be a super bruiser down low. They're well outside the top 330 in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They're allowing opponents to grab 15.5 offensive rebounds per game. I think that that's just enough for Tennessee Tech to cover the number, and I think that that provides enough scoring opportunities for the over. So set a total of 161. I'm going to be in on the over, and I do like the points here with Tennessee Tech. 689, 690 on the card. IU Indianapolis is going to be playing with Morehead St. Morehead St is between a pick-up to a 2-point underdog. Total on this game, 181 to a 182.5. Set a total here of a 180.5, so I am going to be in on the under, and I like Morehead St here on the money line. I set them as a 4.5 point favorite. IU Indy is playing this just absolutely outrageous style, and it's not really leading to wins. Like, it's a very hard style to be able to prepare for, but I think even IU Indy is having a tough time preparing for their own style, as they've got 2 wins, and one has come against a non-Division I foe. Lone Division I team they knocked off was Eastern Michigan, who also knocked off Cincinnati, but for IU Indy, it's not like this is some sort of an amazing three-point shooting team. They're not bad. They're shooting 33% from the outside. You got Kyler Diagostino and Matt Compass coming on up from the non-D1 ranks. They've been able to combine for about 30 points per game, but this is a team that really doesn't have a lot of size whatsoever, so they're going to allow a lot of second and third chances on the glass. It's an IU Indy team that's right now well outside the top 300 in terms of rebound percentage, and with the way that their defense is, they're looking to generate turnovers. They've been a top 10 team in terms of overall turnovers, more of a top 75 team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, because they lead the country in terms of total possessions per game, but when they don't get a turnover, they leave you open from three. They're allowing teams to shoot over 37% from the outside, and you've got a veteran guard in George Marshall, who for this Morehead St team, shooting about 33% from three, 12 points, pair of assists per game. Joshua Legree has done a good job doling it out. He does have 3 turnovers per game, and this is a squad that has been turning the ball over about 13 times per game. They're outside the top 225 in terms of ball security, but Legree has been able to give you about 10 points per contest, and this is a Morehead St team that is going to be able to take the fight to IU Indy down low. They're a top 75 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, and with this Morehead St team, they've always been a very defense-oriented team, and they've always been a team that loves to be able to slow things down. For Morehead St, last year they were well outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game. Right now they're playing a bit faster at about 167th, a little bit of a byproduct of the competition. When you play against Georgia, that's going to speed you up a little bit, but I do think that Morehead St is going to be able to control things on the glass, and I think that allows them to be able to get control of this game. I actually set Morehead St as a 4.5 point favorite. I like them outright on the money line, and with this total set mine at a 180.5, so 181 plus, I'm going to be on the under. 691, 692 on the card. Western Michigan is on the road against Valparaiso, and Valparaiso finds themselves as a 5.5 to a 6 point favorite. So on this game, it is a 148.5 to a 149, and I did set my total here at a 146.5. I'm in on the under for Western Michigan. It's a team that once again is just not lighting it up from 3-point range. Last year, they shot less than 25% from 3-point range in their home games. They've been a little bit better this year, but still not a team that's really going to be laying you up. They're shooting 30.4% from 3-point range. Like the pickup of Drayden Brewer from Florida National. He used to do it all guy there last year. 14.5 points, 7.5 boards, but again, a career less than 25% 3-point shooter. But Jalen Griffith, he's been able to do a really good job in terms of being able to restore some order for this backcourt. 3 assists, 17 points per game. He's been shooting in the high 30s from 3-point range. Love what he's bringing to the table. And then additionally, you've been able to get some good post play as you were a season ago with this team. Max Burton is back from a season ago, 8 points, 6.5 boards. He's also been able to give out 3 assists per game, and it's a Western Michigan team that has been a top 175 team with regards to rebound percentage. For Valparaiso, they don't necessarily have a ton of size after they lose Jerome Palm and company in the offseason, but they've had Rakeem Chaney really step up as a freshman. 16 points, 3.5 assists, shooting 48% from 3. The rest of the team is shooting less than 26% from 3, and just have a team in general that I don't think that they're going to do a great job down low. Sean Tapula has come in to be able to give you 6.5 boards. He's a 6'10" big man, and he's come on down from the non-D1 ranks. He's been solid. JT Pettigrew has been able to give you about 5 boards per game as well. Nobody else gives you more than 3.7 rebounds per game, though, for this Valparaiso squad. They've had a good time in terms of being able to win the turnover battle. They're only turning the ball over 10 times per game, top 55 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. But that said, this is also a squad that has been just lacking a lot from the outside themselves, with everyone outside. Cheney having a tough time from the outside, though I do like Owen Dees. Dees has been able to give you 8.3 rebounds per game, but he's out with a little bit of injury. And Isaiah Barnes, who comes over from Tulsa, where, he last year was giving that team 9 points per game. He's only given these guys 6 points per contest. He's been a bit of a disappointment. Do you think that this is going to be a little bit more of a slog of a game? Neither of these teams are going to be looking to completely play super duper slow, but Western Michigan, 70th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. You've got a Valparaiso team that they're much lower than that at 236. I think that's going to be a struggle for both teams to score. Semi line at a 146.5 with this total, in on the under, and Somehow line at 4.5, so 5+, taking those points with Western Michigan. 693, 694 on the card. It is UT Arlington, and they're going to be playing host to Stephen F. Austin. Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin between a pick'em to a 1-point favorite, and your total on this game, it is 142.5. Did set a total here of a 148. I'm going to be in on the over, and I do like UT Arlington on the money line. Now, UT Arlington having all sorts of issues in terms of taking care of the ball. They are currently 361st in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. This is not the same Stephen F. Austin defense, though. They are outside the top 180 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Matt Brower has his team playing very, very differently. They are looking to actually win the rebound battle a little bit more than anything else, as they've had Keon Thompson be a nice feature guy. He's back from a season ago, 18.5 points, 7 boards, 4.5 assists per game. It's a Stephen F. Austin team that's currently shooting 37.5% from 3, but they're also shooting 60% at the free throw line. After last year, they shot 63% at the free throw line, so that's a lingering issue. You've got Keshawn Christmas, who's been able to give you 6.5 points, 6.5 boards, and the Northwestern State transfer, and Jared Colonel. He has been one of the better shot blockers in all of college basketball. 3.7 blocks, 8 boards, 6 points per game. Just a load of a man down low. And for the Stephen F. Austin team, this is one that is going to be looking to play at a pretty brisk pace. They're not going to be looking like completely play at warp speed or anything like that, but with the Stephen F. Austin team, in terms of total possessions per game, right now they're checking in about 230th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. This has been a UT Arlington team that under KT Turner, they've been looking to play a little bit faster. They've slowed themselves down to about 215th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but this is an Arlington team that does a great job down low. They're right now 41st in the country in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, and when they don't turn the ball over, they've been a relatively efficient offense, as most of it has been on the inside. They're only shooting about 31% from 3, but they're a top 125 team in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. Rayshon Semester is really the lone holdover from a season ago, 17 points, 7 boards, 2 steals. He's been solid, and then Marcel McCreary comes on over from Northern Colorado. He's been able to get the team 11 points. He's their main 3-point shooter, being able to pop it at a clip of 40% from 3-point range, and they themselves are doing a great job in terms of guarding the arc. Not only are teams only shooting 25% from 3, they are really pushing things inside. They're a top 20 team in terms of fewest percentage of opponent shots that do come from 3-point range, and UT Arlington, while they turn the ball over a lot, they themselves are a top 80 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. I do think that with Stephen F. Austin not during the turnovers that they have in the past, that allows for Arlington to be able to get some clean offense. I think both of these teams speed up a little bit here, so set a total of a 148. I like the over, and UT Arlington on the money line, set them as a 4-point favorite. 695, 696 on the card. It is Weber State, and they play us UMKC. The Kangaroos are an 11 to 11.5 point underdog. 152.5 is the total, and so Weber State is a 10-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points with the Kangaroos. UMKC was getting too fast for their own good at the beginning part of the season. This team last year was outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game. They had that game where they gave up the 100 spot to Iona. That was not great, and currently they are 54th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Last few games, they're starting to slow it down a little bit more, and Weber State has decided to speed themselves up as well. Last year, they were outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game, 51st in the country right now. I believe that they're going to stick with that system a little bit more than UMKC because it's working a little bit better with Weber State because they've got some solid 3-point shooting. They're also allowing teams to shoot 19% from 3. That is certainly going to be going northward, but that said, Jace Whiting, who was over at UNLV and Boise State to begin his career, 13.5 points, 40% 3-point shooter. He's been able to do a nice job. This unit has been able to do a great job in terms of hitting the offensive glass as well. Edwin Suarez Jr. along with Malik Goma are currently combining for about 6.3 offensive rebounds per game. They're both between 8 to 8.5 points per game. Nigel Burris began his career over at Idaho. He's a good 38.5% 3-point shooter, and at 6'7", he's able to give you 10.5 points, 6.5 boards, so love his game. And on the flip side, for the CMKC squad, it's one that is just a little bit of a hodgepodge as you do return a few guys from a season ago. Jason Petty has done a nice job giving this team 12.5 points, 5 rebounds per game, and then Jasheem Grady is another one that's holdovers. He's been able to supply 9 points per game, and we should see the CMKC team start to shoot better than 25% from 3-point range. Uriah Evans has actually shot 40% from 3. Small sample size, he has only attempted 5 threes this far this season, and everyone else on the roster has attempted more than 3 threes this season. His shooting shooting less than 30% from distance. That is going to be going northward a little bit, but that said, for UMKC, typically this team has a lot of rough and tumble. They're able to do a nice job on the glass. Right now, well outside the top 270 in terms of their rebound percentage, or outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and they're turning the ball over about 14.5 times per game. So I do think that Weber State is going to be able to get the job done here, but I do, again, think that there's some positivity to him for UMKC. Weber State is not going to continue to allow teams to shoot 19% from three. I think that Kansas City slows things down. So by total 150, I'm in on the under and the points with UMKC. 697, 698 on the card. This is a neutral court game between South Dakota and Air Force, and South Dakota a 3 to a 3.5 point favorite. Still on this game, you're going to be finding it at a 150 to a 150.5, and I am in on the under. I set my total at 147.5. You've got dueling styles here. Air Force, even with playing a game against IU Indy, is still a pretty slow and controlled team, while South Dakota last year was number 3 in the country in terms of total possessions per game. They slowed down a half a hair, but they're still 28th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, while Air Force is 259th, even with that warped game against IU Indy. And for Air Force, this has been a team that year in and year out has always been a relatively good 3-point shooting team. For Air Force right now, they're shooting about 34% from 3-point range, with Lucas Hubben being able to give you 12.5 points, shooting 37.5% from 3-point range. Feels like he should be in Lord of the Rings, but that said, you just don't get a ton down low out of this Air Force team. Wesley Chalkowski is a 7-footer that only gives you 3.5 boards per game, so that's not great. Caleb Walker is starting to step up to the plate. He's been Mr. Versatile, 11.5 points, 5.5 boards, so he's been able to do a solid job there. And for this Air Force team, it's all about protecting the ball. Right now, they are well outside the top 320 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and they, year in and year out, have a tough time on the glass. They're actually inside the top 250 right now with regards to rebound percentage. I don't think that that's going to be too long lasting, especially going up against the 7-footer in Cameron Fens, who's been able to give you 9 points, 5 boards, but he's coming off of injury from a season ago. It's not like this is some sort of flawless South Dakota defense either. Last year, they were well outside the top 280 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They're still outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. South Dakota doing a great job in terms of offensive rebounds, top 50 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, but I mean, the guard play is a little bit suspect. Last year, they led the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Now they're turning the ball over about 13 times per game. Jordan Crawford, Isaac Bruns have been able to combine for 29 points per game, but these two guys along with Jay Oberwin, these are your top 3 scorers, and they're all shooting less than 28.5% from 3-point range, which I do think is going to allow this Air Force team to be able to remain lively in this game. This is a grody Air Force team, but they've been playing a little bit better recently, and with this game, it's being played in Hot Springs, Arkansas, so I think that favors Air Force a very, very, very slight hair, but I mean, this is about as neutral of a game as it gets, so I did set a line of a 1.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Air Force, but I do not want that money line, and so I total 147.5. I'm in on the under. 699, 700 on the card. You got Utah State. They play host to Montana State, and Montana State does find themselves as a underdog of 19.5 points. So on this game between 148 to a 149, and set my line at 16. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Montana State. Utah State is right now top 40 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and they looked really, really good in the Charleston Classic, absolutely dump trucking a few teams along the way. That said, I do think that we're going to see a little bit of a cool down, though. I absolutely love the game of MJ Collins. Comes on over from Vanderbilt, 21 points, 2 assists, shooting 52% from 3. Utah State as a whole, they're right now shooting 40% from 3. They're a top 15 team in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. They're doing a great job on the boards. It's a top 55 team in terms of rebound percentage, and they're a top 55 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. So, I mean, this is a team that's checking a lot of boxes. You bring back Mason Fosloff from a season ago, 13 points, 5 boards. Carson Templin is one of your main low post presence. So, Gary Clark, who comes over from Texas A&M Corpus Christi, is stolen the show down low. He's been able to get the team 9 rebounds per game, but for this Montana State squad, I think that they remain lively because they've been a top 125 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and they run you off the 3-point line. They're allowing opponents to shoot 15.1 threes per game. That is the lowest mark in all of college basketball. While Montana State, they themselves are a top 50 team in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. They've been solid with their 3-point shooting at 38.5%. That allows them to be able to go down low a little bit more, as Patrick McMahon, Davion Brown, they've been able to combine for 26.5 points per game. This is going to be a team that loses a battle down low. They don't have a single guy in the roster that's give you over 5 rebounds per game. The Wisconsin transfer and Chris Hodges, he's been getting starts, and he's only given the team about 2.5 rebounds rebounds per game, so leaving a lot to be desired there. But Jed Miller has been able to give you some versatility, 11.5 points, 2 steals, 5 boards, shooting 42.5% from three-point range. It's a Montana State team that's not afraid to go into their bench, including Howie Keene, who's only played in 3 games as far this season, is likely out for this game. You do have 10 different guys. They're seeing at least 11 minutes per game, so good versatility there. They take care of the ball. They're only turning the ball over about 10.5 times per game, so I think that Montana State is going to be a hold in this game. Utah State is a very impressive team, but set a total here of a 152. This is a Utah State team that they're going to be looking to play at a brisk pace, but they're not going to get out of sorts or anything like that. Utah State about 154th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Montana State more around about 288, so interesting circumstance here. I did set a total of a 152. I think that you just get really good offensive efficiency in this game, so in on the over and the points here with Montana State. 7-1, 7-2 on the card. LaSalle and Penn are going to be doing battle. This is a game that is off the board because both of these teams played yesterday, and this will be from the Palestra, and I've got my handicap. I did set the Quakers of Penn as a 3.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 3 with them. 4 more, take the points with LaSalle, and then set a total of a 151.5. 151 or less, in on the over. 152 or higher, the under. You've got a classic tempo war as Penn is in the top 75 in terms of total possessions per game. Fran McCaffrey comes in, and he's got the team going all gas and no breaks as of right now. And then you've got a LaSalle squad that it has been a nice slowdown with them being 327th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. They bring in Darius Nichols, who was a rock-solid coach over the last few seasons over at Radford, and he's got this team playing some relatively good, shall we say, low-post basketball. Entered in the day, top 125 team in terms of rebound percentage. He brought with him Justin Archer, who was always good over at Radford. He, along with Edward Daniel, both been able to give you about 4.5 rebounds per game as ancillary scores. You've got Josiah Harris, who he comes on over. He's been able to get the team about 5.5 points, 4.5 boards, and for LaSalle, they're shooting as collective about 34.5% from three-point range. Like the game of Jaden Marshall, the Niagara transfer, 12.5 points, and with this squad, they do a nice job in terms of being able to generate some turnovers as well. They're generating about 12.5 turnovers per contest. They face off against a Penn team that has been very much giving it up there well outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but they've really been able to ascend with their offense. This is a top 125 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but I think that there's going to be a bit of regression with the fact that they're shooting 40.5% from three-point range. Like the game of Ethan Roberts, entered into yesterday, averaging 24.5 points, 2 steals, shooting 44% from three-point range. TJ Power is a former top 25 recruit of Virginia and Duke. He's been out supplying 14.5 points, 8.5 boards, but other than he and Augustus Gerard, who have been able to give you 7.5 rebounds per game, you don't necessarily have a ton of size down low, so that has me a little bit concerned. It's been a squad that has been playing a little bit of a thinner rotation, but you do have a nice facilitator in AJ Levine. He's only giving you 3.5 points per game, but he's only got 4.2 assists per game. He's able to get good, clean offense to even someone like a Cam Thrower who's been able to give you about 9.5 points per game. So with Penn, I do believe that they should be the favorite here, as this is a LaSalle team that's in a little bit of transition, but I do like the way that Penn is starting to gel, and I do think that LaSalle slows this game down a little bit. 151 or less, and on the over. 152 or higher, the under. With Penn, willing to lay up to 3 with them. 4 more, taking those points with LaSalle. 7-3, 7-4 on the cards. Cal State Fullerton plays us at Pepperdine, and the Waves of Pepperdine do find themselves as a 3 to a 3.5 point favorite. 158.5 to a 159.5 as the total line. So Fullerton is a 1.5 point favorite. I like them outright on the money line. Fullerton is really looking to play at warp speed. They are currently a top 15 team in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and they've really cleaned up their act. Last season, this team had no point guard, and that gave them no hope whatsoever. Now they're a top 30 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. The offense is much cleaner. They still don't necessarily have one guy that's going to go out there and give you 4+ assists per game, but the freshman Bryce Cofield has been able to do a nice job in terms of giving the team some direction. 15 points, 4.5 boards, 3 assists. Josh Ward is thrown in there, 15.5 points as well. And when it comes to this team, they're leaving something to be desired down low, but you do have a little bit of size with 6'10" Kendrick DeLuna. Not going to give you a lot of scoring, but he's been able to chip in there like 3 rebounds per game, and they're keeping teams from being able to grab offensive rebounds as well. This has been a top 75 unit in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They themselves are not grabbing a lot of second and third chances, but they're doing a better job being able to develop good, clean offense. And for Pepperdine, they're currently 290th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Now, Also a Pepperdine team that's actually been one of the better mid-major teams in terms of rebound percentage. Top 55 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that they grab as an offensive rebound, but just not a ton of shooting on this team. Their shooting is collective 29.3% from three. Javon Cooley was a really nice scorer over at Marist a few seasons ago, 13.5 points, 6 boards per contest, and Styles Phipps, who comes over from Grand Canyon, he's been really versatile. 11 points, 6.5 boards, 6 assists, steal and a half per contest. He shoots 23.5% from three-point range. Yanat Levy, he comes over from Turkey, played a little bit over at Green Bay last season. He's only given the team about 5 points per game. They need to unlock him a little bit more, and for this Pepperdine team, they've been not doing a great job in terms of being able to generate ball pressure. They've been outside the top 225 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. They're allowing teams to be able to really shoot it from three. They have one of the highest three-point rates on defense in all of college basketball, and I do think that Fullerton finds a way to be able to persevere and get the job done. And I think it's going to be a relatively high-scoring game, but I think that we've gone a little bit too far here, as I do think that Fullerton going to back off the tempo a little bit. Pepperdine a little bit more of a mid-tempo team outside the top 200 in terms of total possessions per game, so set a total of a 155.5. I'm in on the under, and Fullerton on the money line. 7-5, 7-6 on the card. It is UC Riverside, and they're going to be on the road facing off against Utah Tech. And Utah Tech finds themselves as a 3.5 to a 4.5 point favorite. Total on this game between 144.5 to a 145.5. And with Riverside, I set them as an underdog of 2.5 points. So I'm going to be willing to take 3+ with them for Riverside. They need to do a better job of taking care of the ball. When Gus Arginal was coaching over at Cal State Bernardino the last few seasons, his teams would always win the turnover battle, and that's been the opposite here at Riverside. His Riverside team has turned the ball over 15 times per game. They're outside the top 320 in terms of just ball security, and they have not done a great job in terms of being able to supply second and third chances. Outside the top 300 in terms of offensive rebound percentage, but they do have a nice head of the snake in Andrew Henderson, who's been able to do a nice job. Henderson supplying 18 points, pair of assists, 5 rebounds, and he's been able to shoot 40% from three-point. And Markeel Worthy, who comes over from UMass, he's been able to do a nice job, give the team about 4.5 rebounds, 14 points per game. So do like what these guys bring to the table. Osiris Grady, who comes over from Utah Valley, has been able to throw in their 7.5 rebounds per game. And on the flip side of things for Utah Tech, this has just been a team that in general has always been based around three-point shooting, and they just have not been able to get a lot of great three-point shooting this year. They're shooting 27.5% as a collective. That is a bottom 30 mark in all of college basketball. Now, they're allowing teams to shoot less than 30% from three-point, but I think that you see some negative regression there. You've got Noah Belonga, who comes over from St. Bonaventure. He's been able to give you 11 points, 5 boards, and this team has much improved on the glass from past seasons with bringing in the Utah Valley transfer and Ethan Potter, 16 points, 7.5 boards, a little bit over a block per contest, so do like what he's bringing to the table. And Jashawn Holt, how about him coming over after he was over at Alabama and Georgia, former top 150 recruit, 10.5 points per game. Now, he shoots 63% of the free throw line, but it's right now shooting 48% from three-point range. I think that there should be a little bit of regression for him and positivity for everyone else, because he's the only guy that has attempted more than 2 threes that is shooting above 33.5% from three-point range for this group. But I do think that for Utah Tech, they're going to be able to do a relatively solid job on the glass. I do, again, think that there's going to be a little bit of negative regression with regards to their shooting, and this has been a team that has been a little bit hit or miss with regards to that offense as well. I do think that for Utah Tech, they should be a little bit of a favorite, but I think that Riverside holds in there, and with Utah Tech, they are a top 175 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they're a team that typically likes to play a little bit faster. They've been a bit more mid-tempoed this season, and with Gus Arginal, I do think that he gets this UC Riverside team to be playing a little bit more up-tempo. I don't think that they're going to be playing at some sort of a harebrained pace or anything like that, but currently for Riverside, in terms of total possessions per game, checking in right around about 204th. I think that they climb just a little bit with that regard, and I think you get some late game filling. Somebody total at a 150.5, like the over, and 3+ here with Riverside 7-7, 7-8 on the card. Buffalo is on the road against Canisius. Canisius finds themselves as a home underdog of 6.5 to 7.5 points. So on this game between 142.5 to a 143.5, and with Canisius, I set them as an underdog of 5.5 points. So 6+ is my buy point on them. You've got a Buffalo unit that has been really good in terms of offensive efficiency, top 75 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. That three-point shooting has really taken off for them. They're right now shooting 38.5% from the outside, with Daniel Freitag and Angelo Breezy being a pair of transfers that have come in, combined for 34 points per game, combined to shoot about 38% from three. Love what they bring to the table there. Not a team that's going to give you a lot of rebounding. This is a team that's getting just not a lot in terms of second and third chances, outside the top 275 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that resulted in offensive rebounding. Buffalo's been a top 10 team in terms of free free throws on a per possession basis. They're really playing slow. They're outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game, and this is a squad that is also giving it up on defense. They've been well outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. I think that allows this Canisius team to hold in there. Canisius won 3 games all of last season, and they've already won 4 games this year. Now, they aren't facing off against great competition. One of those came against a non-D1 team. Narrow escapes against Mercyhurst and Maryland Eastern Shore. You're not necessarily overly impressed there, but Brian Najonja has been able to give you 13 points, 5.5 boards. I do think that they can win this battle down low against a Buffalo team that really, outside of Noah Batchelor, they don't have a ton of guys pounding the boards, as Michael Everbrow spent the last 2 years over at Siena. He spent a little bit of time over at Central Arkansas as well. He's been able to supply the team with about 6 rebounds per game. Khalil Singleton has come over from Holy Cross, and he's done a great job at the guard spot as well, giving the team 12.5 points per game. Last year, this was a Canisius team that actually shot it really well from 3. Right now, they're shooting about 36.5% from 3, with Nadonja shooting about 47.5% from distance. Should see a little bit of regression there, and for Canisius, they do need to clean up their actives. They are well outside the top 250 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and it's an interesting spot because you've got 2 teams that are pretty solid with regards to their offensive efficiency, pretty solid in terms of giving it up on defense, and pair of teams that they really don't play fast. Canisius, out of 365 teams, currently checks in 365th in terms of total possessions per game. Buffalo 339th, so it's a case where you have to be banking on efficiency for an over, and I'm banking on that efficiency. I did set my total at a 147.5. I do like the over, and with this Canisius squad at 6+, I'm going to be willing to take those points. 709, 710 on the card. It is Penn State, and they're going to be playing host to Sacred Heart. Sacred Heart 14.5 to 15.5 point underdogs. 160.5 to 161.5 is the total. Instead of a total of 160.5, so 161+, I'm going to be in on the under. Penn State has really slowed down their tempo, and Sacred Heart, they are doubling down on running it and gunning it. The Sacred Heart team, in terms of total possessions per game, currently about 150th in all of college basketball, but they played a game where both they and Central Connecticut got past 90 points in regulation a few days ago, and that's a really good Central Connecticut defense. And for Penn State, typically this is a top 75 team in terms of total possessions per game, 348th. Now, Sacred Heart is outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. For Penn State, they've just been really efficient in terms of their offenses. They're not turning it over. 7.1 turnovers per game is the fewest in all of college basketball. This despite the fact that they've got a freshman backcourt led by Mali Tunka along with Keita Mingo. Both of these guys are giving you between 14 to 14.5 points per game. Mingo shooting 18% from 3, but you've got Tunka shooting 44.5% from the outside. Really the lone holdover from a season ago is Fede De Leon. He's been able to get 13 points, 2.5 assists per contest. So team is right now doling out good, clean offense. They're not generating turnovers the way that they have under Mike Rhodes in the past, but they're also limiting free throw attempts, as they have been a top 30 team in terms of fewest fouls committed on a per possession basis. And this is a Sacred Heart team that they are very good in terms of just being able to bomb it from 3-point range. They're shooting 36% from 3-point range. Anquan Hill staying 6'8", 6'9", 18.5 points. Last year shot well over 42% from 3. This year that's down to about 30%, but everyone around him has been able to pick it up. Jan Farrell, who comes over from St. Bonaventure where he began his career, spent some time at East Carolina. He's bounced around quite a bit. Deshaun Giddens and Niall Ralph Bayer, they're all shooting at least 41% from 3, with Bayer and Farrell, they're combining for 19.5 points per game. Giddens has been getting it good with about 15.5 points, 3.5 rebounds per game, and Ralph Bayer was dealing with a little bit of injury to begin the season. He's back out there on the floor. That has been able to give the team a little bit more oomph and has caused them to go a tad bit more up-tempo. And then you've got Makai Connor. He's not a guy that's going to be scoring a whole heck of a lot, but last season he was only got about 6.5 assists per game, down a little bit this year, but 4.7 assists, but he's also lowered the turnovers. Last year, 3.1 turnovers per game, down to about 1.5 this season. So you've got Sacred Heart doling out a little bit of cleaner offense than they did a season ago, and they've been a top 175 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, just getting bludgeoned on the defensive side of things. They're outside the top 320 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. So interesting circumstance here. I just don't know if you get enough possessions for an over. I set my total at a 160.5, so at a 161+, I'm in on the under end. I do think the Penn State, even though they don't necessarily have a ton of size down low, I think that they're going to be able to do a rock solid job winning that rebound battle. Josh Reed at 6'7", is able to give you 10 points, 4.5 boards. You've had Dominic Seward be able to give you some nice contributions as well. Won the lone holdovers from a season ago, and I do think that Penn State going to start to generate just a few more turnovers than they have to begin the season. So set a line at 16.5, willing to lay up to 16 with Penn State, and I'm in on a 161 plus under. 7-11, 7-12 on the betting board. It's Elon, and then you play us a Mercer. Mercer finds themselves as an underdog of 1.5 to 2.5 points on scheme between 161.5 to 162.5. Set a line with regards to a total of a 163.5. I'm in on the over. Mercer is a team that I think is really going to want to run under Coach Mr. Ritter with Ryan Ritter. He comes over from Bethune-Cookman, where you did a really good job with that program, and with this Mercer team, they've been cranking up their tempo a little bit. They're not necessarily playing at warp speed, 188th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Elon, after they were a bit slower last year, they were outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. They've experienced a tempo shift. They're now 121st in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Elon's become a top 125 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They were not great from three last year. Now they're shooting 37.1% from the outside, as it's been all based around Randall Pettis II. He has come in, he's been able to give the team 15.5 points per game, began his career over at Northern Kentucky, where he was a little bit of a part-time starter a season ago, and right now he's going bombs away at 50% from three. There should be some regression coming there, but Kapper Klanzic began his career over at Albany and St. Joe's. He's been able to give you 10.5 points, 7 rebounds per game. Tanner Cutthrow, who comes over from a Fort Wayne team that really pushed tempo last year, 7 boards, a little bit over a steal per contest, and this is an Elon team that is now gambling for turnovers a little bit more. They're a middle of the road team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. After last year, they were outside the top 300, and they're taking care of the ball. Elon is a top 55 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They've also been really stinking lucky, as teams are shooting 57.7% at the free throw line against them. That's going to be going northward because you can't guard the free throw line. And for Mercer, it's been all about Baraka Okoji. Comes over from George Mason, 15.5 points, 4.5 boards, 5.5 assists. Not shooting it well from three, but Zaire Williams and Quentin Perkins, they've been able to combine for 26 points per game. Both are shooting over 41% from three-point range. It is a squad that has been able to limit the turnovers after they were a little bit of a less than efficient offense last year, down to about 11 turnovers per game this season. They keep teams off the free throw line. They've been a top 75 team in terms of not allowing free throws, and this team has been able to do a nice job of grabbing offensive rebounds themselves, but they're also outside the top 350 in terms of their defensive rebound percentage, despite the fact that Brady Shoulders has been able to give you 8 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. So I think that you get a nice, clean, efficient game. Set by total 163.5. I like the over in the end. Do think that Elon gets the job done. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 3 with them. Made them 3.5 point favorite. 7-13, 7-14 on the card. UW Milwaukee is on the road against Akron. The Zips are a 14.5 point favorite. 168.5 to 169 is the total, and set Akron as a 14.5 point favorite. This opened up at a 15. We can get back to a 15 plus. I'm going to be willing to take those points with UW Milwaukee. It's a Milwaukee team that's looking to fly under Bart Lundy, and for Akron, they really have cranked up their tempo over the last few seasons. It used to be a John Gross system that was very slow and controlled. Now Akron is about 125th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, down a little bit from a season ago, but certainly they've experienced a little bit of shift. This is a UW Milwaukee team that right now checks in terms of total possessions per game at about 165th, as for UW Milwaukee, they lost a lot of their key pieces from a season ago, but they still do have some solid rebounding. They've taken a big step back after they were number 4 in the country in terms of rebound percentage a season ago, but Daniil Janovic, who comes over from SMU, is able to give 12.5 points, 6 rebounds per game. They've been doing a little bit more by committee, as Faison Fields and Saku Kona have been able to combine for about 10.5 rebounds per game. It's Seth Hubbard. He's been the head of the stake. He spent some time over at Toledo along with Western Michigan. He's been able to supply the team with 16 points, a little bit over a steal per contest, 3-point shooting, not necessarily the forte of UW Milwaukee, shooting about 33.5% from the outside, but they've also limited turnovers with Hubbard at the helm. They've been a top 85 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and Akron is just a top 35 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Like, they're playing fast, but it's not necessarily warp speed. They're averaging 94.9 points per game as they shoot 38% from 3, which I think is sustainable. Samah Scott along Tavari Johnson have been your main scorers. Johnson, 4.5 assists, 19 points per game. Scott shooting 43.5% from 3, 14 points, 3.5 assists out of him. And then Evan Mahaffey, who began his career over at Ohio State. He's just been all sorts of versatile. A steal and a half, 10.5 points, 4.5 boards. He's right now shooting 44% from 3-point range. They don't necessarily have that low post presence like they have with James Okonkwo a season ago, but this is still a top 100 team with regards to rebound percentage. They're taking good care of the ball with only 10 turnovers per game. They're a top 50 team in terms of 2-point shooting percentage. I do think that UW Milwaukee does just enough to hold in there, but do think that this is going to be a spot where it's going to be a little bit of an efficient game. Again, though, I do think that with UW Milwaukee slowing things down just a scotch and not necessarily being the most amazing 3-point shooting team, that does just enough for an under. So set a total of 164.5. I'm in on the under, and at 15 plus, going to be willing to take those points with Milwaukee. 7:15, 7:16 on the card. Little Rock is on the road against Southern Illinois. Southern Illinois is a 11.5 to a 12.5 point favorite. 145.5 to 146.5 is the total, and set a total of a 150.5. I'm in on the over. You've got a Scott Nagy system that is always about just being able to be a pretty efficient offense and not so much of an efficient defense. You take a look at Wright State in the last few years that he was there. That was very much textbook to that. And Southern Illinois, 69th, very nice in terms of total possessions per game. And they face off against a Little Rock team that played incredibly slow last season, and they're right back at it. 322nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. But unlike last year, where Little Rock was a top 60 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they now find themselves well outside the top 250. They're still doing a pretty solid job in terms of hitting the glass. They've been a top 150 team in terms of rebound percentage. Thatch Gakic has been able to give you about 10 points, 5 rebounds per game, and they're doing a great job by committee. You got 5 separate guys that are right now giving you over 4.2 rebounds per game. Jonathan Lawson made old over from a season ago, 13 points, 4.5 boards, 3.5 assists, steal and a half per contest, shooting 34.5% from 3. And this team was very poor with their 3-point shooting last year. Right now they're shooting 43% from 3, with Braxton Bailiff shooting 71% from distance. This is going to be going downward, and I do think that it needs to be thrown in there that Little Rock has attempted the fewest threes per game of any team in all of college basketball. So even though they're shooting it well from 3, they're really not taking a lot of threes. And on the flip side of things, you've got yourself a bunch that has been able to do a really nice job in Southern Illinois of being able to just grind it inside themselves. This is a Southern Illinois team that they're outside the top 300 in terms of percentage of their shots that come from 3-point range. So they're going to be looking to bust it down low with someone like a Davion Sykes, who's been able to give you 10 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. They've got 3 separate guys that give you over 5.5 rebounds per game, with the Algby brothers both being able to give you right around about 6 rebounds per game, with Prince and Rollins give you a combined 11.9 rebounds per game between the two of them. So they've done a nice job in terms of controlling things down low. It's a Southern Illinois team that, by the way, is currently shooting 22.8% from 3. Recognize that this is not going to be a great 3-point shooting team, but we should see a little bit of positivity there, especially with having Koron House, who's been able to do a really nice job coming on over from Jacksonville State. He's been able to supply the team with 16.5 points, 2.5 assists per game. I like the way that he's able to dish out this offense, and it's a Southern Illinois team that has been able to do a pretty good job on the turnover front, despite playing up tempo, only about 11 turnovers per game. So I do think that for Southern Illinois, they do find a way to get the job done against Little Rock, and I think that they start to really crank things up and see some positivity with that 3-point shooting. So did set my line here at a 12.5, willing to lay up to 12 with Southern Illinois. Like the over, set my total out of 150.5. 7:17, 7:18 on the card. It's Pacific in the playoffs at Sacramento State. Sac State is a underdog of 9 to 9.5 points. Last game it is 146.5, and set Sacramento State as a 9.5 point underdog. I'm willing to lay up to 9 with Pacific. Pacific has done a really nice job under Dave Smart of just really being able to progress. He comes on over from Carleton College in Canada. He's in year number 2, and he brought with him Elias Ralph, who's become the top scorer for the team. 16 points, 6.5 boards. He's right now shooting 45% from 3. That's not going to be lasting, but still, for Pacific, they've been able to do a relatively solid job of not allowing a lot of second and third chances. Top 200 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Your lying teams who only shoot 30% from 3. Offense has left a little bit of something to be desired with 12.5 turnovers per game, as they did lose their main point guard from a season ago, but Dean Clayton from Maine has done a great job in terms of reclaiming that mantle. 5.5 assists. Only gives you about 8.5 points per game. It's never really been a demonstrative score, but Isaac Jack, who spent some time over at Buffalo, has been able to help this team out on the glass. He's able to give you 5 boards per game. And for Sacramento State, your number 1 are Mike Bibby and general manager Shaquille O'Neal. Well, it's right now not producing a ton of offense. They're outside the top 200 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Jeremiah Terry has been a nice low post presence. 15.5 points, 8 boards, a little bit over 2 blocks per contest. And then Prophet Johnson comes over from Fairfield, and he's been a do-it-all guy. 4 assists, 2.5 steals, 9.5 boards, shooting 47% from 3, 16 points per game. Just a very top-heavy team, though. Mikey Williams, he was a very highly touted recruit back in the day. He's been taking his fair share of shots. He's giving you 13.5 points, shoots about 32% from 3-point range, but it is a squad that they just need more out of some of these other guys, like Shaq's son, Shaquille O'Neal. He's only been able to give the team about 4.5 points per game as a big man. He's pulling in there less than 3 boards per contest. It is a Sacramento State team that has been having a rough time in terms of taking care of the ball outside the top 230 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and they're not executing inside. They're 330th in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage, and I do think that with Pacific being able to take good care of the ball, and with the Sacramento State team just frankly not getting anything outside their main few guys, that Pacific does find a way to get the job done. And it's a Sacramento State team that I feel like is just trying to find their identity in general. You've got a Pacific team that I think when it's all said and done is going to be a lower tempo team, 273rd in the country in terms of total possessions frame. Sacramento State more around about 144th. So did set a total here of a 145.5 at 146 plus. I'm in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 9 with Pacific. 719, 720 on the card. It is Oregon State, and they play host to Cal Baptist. The Lancers are a 1.5 to 1 point underdog. The last game, it is 137.5, and I said Oregon State as a 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay 1 and not a hair more. As Oregon State has been able to pull out all these games at home, but all of them seem to be like one possession games. So that's been very interesting to look at, to say the least. They win against North Texas by 2 points, UIC by 3 points, North Dakota State by 2 points, and since then they've been taking it on the chin a little bit, including just a relatively rough multi-team event. But that said, they've got a pair of guys that returned from the season ago, Josiah Lake and Isaiah C., who have been able to combine for 22 points per game. Both of these guys have been rough with their 3-point shooting after Oregon State was a good 3-point shooting team last year. They lose their top 3 scorers, and now they're shooting 31.5% from the outside, and the ball security has been an issue for this team as they're outside the top 250 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, playing very slow and controlled outside the top 3 in terms of total possessions per game. They seem to be finding a little bit more from Noah Ammenhauser, 7-footer that comes over from Coastal Carolina. Last year gave that team 6 rebounds per game, only about 5 here with this squad, as it's been a little bit mix and match with bringing in someone like a Ore Diaz-Graham, who's been not really effective for this team whatsoever. Stephen Olawani has been dealing with a little bit of injury. You've got Yak Yak, that's his actual name, not necessarily supplying a ton down low, but for Cal Baptist, you have to think that Dominic Daniels is going to be able to play in this game. He got a little bit of a black eye when they were playing against Grambling. He took a bit of a elbow to the face, so he did not play in their game against San Diego, but it seems like he should be good to go in this game. He's a guy that averages 19 points per game, but last season Cal Baptist was a rough team from 3-point range, and they're still not necessarily amazing. They're shooting 32.5% from the outside. It's been a little bit sloppy in terms of their ball security. They're turning the ball over about 13 times per game. They've been a really good team on the glass. This is a team that is in the top 50 with regards to rebound percentage, as you've got a true 7-footer in Brady Henge, who doesn't give you a lot of scoring but supplies 6 rebounds per game. Thomas Endong has been able to give you 8 boards, only about 5.5 points per game, but does a nice job down low. So these guys are able to do a nice job with that regard, but I do feel like Oregon State finding a little bit more with Ammenhauser. This is a Cal Baptist team that they're looking to run you off the 3-point line, as this team is allowing the fewest made 3-point shots in all of college basketball right now. But again, Oregon State has really been struggling with that 3-point shot. They need to look down low anyway, and the travel to get out there to Corvallis, always relatively rough. So I did set a line of 1.5. I'm willing to lay up to 1 with Oregon State. I think that this is going to be a game that comes down to late game filling, and I do think that there's going to be good execution on offense on both sides. So I did set a total of a 139.5. I do like the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 1, not a half a point more with Oregon State. These final few games are off the board until we hit the extra games, since these are all teams that played yesterday. It's 7:21, 7:22 on the card. It is Texas State and Lehigh. They do battle from Resorts World out here in lovely Las Vegas. I set my handicap to where I set Texas State as a 7.5 point favorite, so 7 or less, willing to lay with them. 8 or more, take the points with Lehigh, and set a total of a 133.5, with the 133 or less being a play on the over, 134 or higher the under. Texas State is playing at one of the slower paces that you're going to find in all of college basketball. They are well outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game. Lehigh, not uber slow, but still pretty slow. About 256th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Lehigh just will not haul in their offensive rebounds. They're one of the worst rebounding teams in all of college basketball. Hincklevy has been able to get this team in the neighborhood about 6.5 rebounds per game. He's got 6'9" size, and then you've had Andrew Orosevich, who has been able to give this team a little bit of a lift. He's missed a game or two this season, but has come in. He's been able to give the team 13 points per game, but it's really all about Nasir Whitlock at this point. 15.5 points, 4.5 boards. Not necessarily shooting it amazing from 3 as Joshua Ingram. He's been able to shoot about 40% from 3. He supplies the team with 9 points per game, but just not a lot of depth either with this bunch. And for Texas State, this team, even though they shoot it relatively well from 3, they choose to pile drive the ball down low. You've got Mark Drone, a very highly touted junior college guy, dealt with injury last year. He's now been able to give you about 10.5 points per game. TJ Hall has really been your main scorer. 12 points, 6 boards, 2.5 assists per game for a team that entered yesterday shooting 36% from 3, but bottom 5 in the nation in terms of just 3-point attempts per game. They do a nice job in terms of being able to defend down low, top 55 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and with Lehigh having struggles on the glass, this should allow Texas State to really be able to plow on the boards as they entered into yesterday, grabbing 9 more rebounds than their opponents. You've got the Louisiana Monroe transfers in Jalen Bolden and Mekhi Willis still trying to find their bearings. Bolden has been a little bit disappointing with only about 5 points, 3 rebounds per game. Willis has been able to give you 9 points per game, and Caden Gums, it's on a very low sample size, but he's been able to shoot over 45% from 3, doling out 4.5 assists per game. And for Texas State, they're nice, slow, and control, but they generate a lot of turnovers. Top 100 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they themselves have been turning the ball over about 14 times per game. So 133 or less in on the over, 134 or higher the under. Texas State, I'm willing to lay up to 7 with them, 8 or more taking the points with Lehigh. 723, 724, also from lovely Las Vegas. UC Santa Barbara and Seattle do battle. I set Seattle as a 1-point underdog, so pretty much whoever the underdog is, I'm probably going to be willing to take a shot on them. I'd be, if I really needed to, willing to lay 1 point with Santa Barbara, but this, for me, is a relative toss-up game, and then set a total of a 143, so 142.5 or less in on the over, 143.5 or higher the under. For Santa Barbara, they've sped themselves up a little bit this year, but still a relative mid-tempo team. Seattle, though, has become a top 125 team in terms of total possessions per game, but I do think that Santa Barbara going to be able to win the battle down low. They've been a top 55 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. You bring in Ada Mahaney. He was a really nice player over at St. Mary's a few seasons ago, just was not a fit over at UConn. He's given the team 12.5 points, 3 assists per game, and then Colin Smith, good versatility out of him. 15.5 points, 4 boards. Right now he's shooting over 50% from 3 at about 6'8". And then Zion Ceasley, he's been able to give you about 9 points per contest as well. It's a Santa Barbara team that's not quite generating as many turnovers as a season goes, so it's a little bit of a newer look team. And then for Seattle last year, they were one of the lesser teams in all of college basketball in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage. They entered into yesterday shooting as a collective over 43% from 3. You're going to see some regression there, but Braden Maldonado has been absolutely spectacular for this team. He's given you 18 points, 4 boards, 2.5 assists. He's been shooting darn near 50% from 3-point. And then John Succhio, he comes over from Gonzaga. He's been able to do a nice job getting the team 4 boards, a little bit over 11.5 points per game, 6'8", little bit of a do-it-all player. You've got Haran Don down low, who's been able to do a good job in terms of giving you a block per game, a few rebounds. So I do think that UC Santa Barbara's advantage on the glass is going to be big. This is a Seattle team that entered into yesterday with nobody hauling in there more than 5 rebounds per game. And for Santa Barbara, even though they got a little bit of a test against Lehigh yesterday, you do have to like the fact that Mario Little, who comes over from Baylor along with Utah, has been able to produce the way that he has, over 12 points, 6 boards, 4 assists. So he's checking a lot of boxes there. And I do think that for UC Santa Barbara, they're going to be able to win this game from within. Like I said, Santa Barbara's 1-point favorite. So whoever the underdog becomes, that's who I'm going to essentially be taking in this spot. And then 142.5 or less in on the over, 143.5 or higher the under. And now we go 725, 726. This is the Emerald Coast Classic between Georgia Tech and Drake. No numbers on this game, but I've got my handicap. Willing to lay up to 3 with Georgia Tech. Set them as a 3.5-point favorite. 4 or more taking the points with the Drake, and then set a total to where a 133 or less in on the over, 134 or higher the under. Drake has been a pretty rock-solid defense. Top 115 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but with Georgia Tech, right now, they are actually number 2 in the country in terms of total possessions per game at the very least. They were entering into the day on Friday against DePaul, and for Georgia Tech, just all about this offense not being able to get going. This team is outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. While they do a solid job of generating turnovers, they themselves have had a little bit of tough time taking care of things. Now, I like Mohamed Siala along Bate and Ndongo down low, with Siala about 10 boards, a little bit over 11 points per game, and Ndongo is a guy that's able to pop it from 3 if absolutely needed, but he's been supplying about 11.5 points, 8.5 rebounds per game, so they've been able to do a good job there. Lamar Washington is a little bit of a do-it-all guy, except for the fact that he can't hit threes to save his life. Comes on over from Pacific. He's been able to get this team right around about 8.5 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, but again, never has really been able to give you any 3-point shooting. That's why they really need Kwasi Reeves to be able to step up, who's been the main scorer with about 13 points per game, shoots in the mid-high 30s from 3-point range. And for Drake, this is year number 1 under former South Dakota State coach Eric Henderson, and they've been able to get a lot of production out of Jalen Quinn. He entered into yesterday about 14.5 points, 3.5 3.5 assists per game. It is a Drake squad that has done a great job in terms of taking care of the ball. Entered into yesterday, only turned the ball over about 10 times per game. Problem is, they've been leaving something to be desired with regards to three-point shooting. Doing a good job down low as Wilkins Jr., Exacte, along with Oku, Frederico. These two guys have been able to do a nice job in terms of being able to give you both 6+ rebounds per game. Frederico has been the main guy. He's been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game. And then Isaiah Carr just has not been able to get out there on the floor because of the way that those guys have been able to play down low. But you're just going to need to get a little bit more three-point shooting. Went 8 of 30 yesterday. The team is doing a nice job taking care of the ball. And this is a Drake team that is playing quite slow and controlled. If you look at Georgia Tech, they're actually a top 100 team in terms of total possessions per game. That double overtime game against Maryland Eastern Shore really warped their numbers, though. They're a much slower team than that. And Drake turned 72nd in terms of total possessions per game. So 133 less than on the over, 134 higher the under. One to lay up to 3 points with Georgia Tech. 4 more take the points with Drake. And this is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra game. 727, 728. DePaul's taking on LSU. Set LSU to where I'm willing to lay up to 9 with them. 10 or more. I'm going to be taking the points with DePaul, and then 150 or less in on the over, 151 or higher the under. I made by handicap LSU minus 9.5 with a total of 150.5. And for LSU, they entered in the day on Friday, number 1 in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Did get hit by a little bit of speed bump against Drake. It was the first time they faced a defense that was within the top 2 of 15 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but still a team that's doing a great job in terms of taking care of the ball. It's De'Don Thomas, who comes on over from UNLV. He's been masterful at the point guard spot, 7.5 assists, 14 points per game, mid-30s career three-point shooter. Markel Sutton has really been able to give this team some nice rebounding as well. He's supplying the team with 9 boards. At 6'8", he's able to pop it from 3, giving you about 13 to 14 points per game, and then you've got some mixers and shakers. Michael Nwoko is actually your top scorer. He's been able to give the team 18 plus points per game, known a little bit more for his defense, but he's been able to step up in a big way. And then you've got a 6'10" big man in Jalen Reed, who's a career north of 39% three-point shooter, so lots of versatility there. But now they face off against a DePaul team that is a top 45 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, leaving quite a bit to be desired with regards to their offense, but they do seem to be finding their bearings a little bit more in terms of their facilitation. It's still leaving a little bit of something to be desired. You're going to be relying upon someone like a NJ Thomas down low, who's been able to give you 8 rebounds per game. This team is much more, shall we say, sound on the interior, but Landon Blocker has now been able to give you a little bit over 3 assists per game. He gave the team 18 points yesterday. Not necessarily a great three-point shooter, and this is going to be a team that leaves something to be desired from the outside, but you've got CJ Gunn, who's been able to give you double figures. Theo Pierre-Justin, he's been able to do a nice job coming in, giving this team right around about 7 points, 4 boards. He actually comes over from the country of France, and this is a DePaul team that they should be able to do a nice job on the glass. DePaul is going to need to clean up their act a little bit with regards to their turnovers. They did a better job yesterday, but they've been turning the ball over a little bit over 12 times per game, so this is a circumstance where I do think that LSU is going to be able to get a little bit more of their tempo. DePaul is looking to play a little bit more controlled this year. They're about 140th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. LSU, ever since Matt McMahon took over, they've been right in this right around 75 range in terms of total possessions per game. So 150 or less in on the over, 151 or higher the under with LSU. 1 lay up to 9 with them, 10 or more. Take the points with DePaul, and now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-501, 306-502. It's Navy and Southeast Louisiana doing battle on a neutral court, and for Navy, they are a 4.5 to a 5.5 point favorite. 139.5 is the total line. Set Navy as a 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Southeast Louisiana was able to get by yesterday against Gardner-Webb in a game that was a little bit closer than you needed it to be in. Southeast Louisiana should experience a little bit of three-point shooting positivity. They're still shooting below 24% from the outside, and you got a Navy team that they got dump trucked yesterday against UNC Wilmington, but this is still one of the most veteran teams in all of college basketball, and they should be able to manhandle things down low. Donovan Draper along with Aiden Keoe entered into yesterday, combined about 16 rebounds per game. Austin Benjini, Jinwoo Kim have been able to combine for about 28.5 points per game for a Navy team that has been shooting about 37.5% from 3. They do a solid job pretty much all the way around. There's not really one big forte, but you've got a lot of guys that have played with one another. Mike Woods has been able to give you about 45% three-point shooting and 9 points per contest. And for Southeast Louisiana, they're doing a relatively okay job with regards to their defense, but again, that three-point shooting has just been rough to say the least. You've got Jeremy Leasy along with Jalen Forrest, who have been able to combine for about 22 to 23 points per game, but entering into the day on Friday, pretty much CJ Booker was the only guy that attempted more than like 7 threes. I was shooting above 30% from the outside. They do lose Brody Woodbury from season ago, so the rebounding has been down a little bit, but they're still a top 75 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. They're allowing teams to shoot less than 32% from three-point range themselves, so they've been pretty solid with that regard, but giving it up down low outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, and with Southeast Louisiana over 13 turnovers per game, I think that they're a little bit too sloppy to hold in this one. I do think the Navy going to be able to find their footing, and Southeast Louisiana, again, they should experience a little bit of positivity with that three-point shooting, so set a total of a 140.5. I like the over with Navy. One up to 6 with them, made them a 6.5-point favorite. 306-503, 306-504. It's Bethune-Cookman on the road against Indiana, and Indiana finds themselves as 25.5 to 26.5-point favorites. Saw this game between 149.5 to 150.5, and took the points here with Bethune-Cookman. Set them as an 18.5-point underdog. Now, you're not going to look at the Bethune-Cookman just sheet in general of statistics and be wowed by really any of them, but this team has already taken Auburn to overtime on the road. They've won on the road against Ohio. They held in there to single digits against State, and this is a team that is just very tough. And now you've got the Heedy brothers playing with one another. Jacoby and Quentin Heedy have been able to combine for about 27 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. Ontario Morris, a former top 30 recruit of Kansas and Texas, 14 points, 5.5 boards, 4 assists. He's been rock solid. They're waiting upon the eligibility of Dr. Bradley, and Reggie Ward is out with injury, but even with that, you've got a guy in Ariel Bland who he saw some good minutes over at UC Santa Barbara 2 seasons ago. He's been able to supply this team with 6 rebounds per game. They're keeping things relatively clean compared to the competition that they're playing. Only 12 turnovers per game, I would say, is actually pretty rock solid. And for Indiana, this is a unit that currently ranks in the top 10 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but 69 plus points allowed in 3 out of their last 5 games. You've got Tucker DeVries, who's giving you 17.5 points, 5.5 boards, one of the most versatile players in all of college basketball. He and Lamar Wilkerson combining to shoot about 44.5% from 3. Wilkerson has been able to give you 16 points per game, and they should be able to win the battle down low with Sam Alexis, who was part of that title-winning team over at Florida season ago. Give the team 6 rebounds per game, and then he doesn't score a lot, but Connor Henry does a good job just at the controls of doling out good, clean offense. 4 points, 4 boards, 4 assists, so very equal there, but do think that this number has gone a little bit too far out of whack. I do think that Bethune-Cookman going to do a nice job taking care of the ball. It's not an Indiana team that's pulling in there a bunch of offensive rebounds either, so circumstance where I did set Indiana as an 18.5-point favorite, I'm going to be willing to take the points. Did set a total of 154.5. Indiana, not necessarily playing at warp speed, but they're not necessarily playing slowly either. Bethune-Cookman, they're, again, not necessarily a super duper up-tempo team, but I mean, they're a team that I think is going to play with a little bit more pace towards the back half of the season, 220th in terms of total possessions per game, so do like the over and the points here with Bethune-Cookman. 306-505, 306-506. You've got Longwood, and they're going to be playing against Maine. No numbers up on this game because these teams played yesterday, but I did set Longwood as a 5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 4.5 with them, 5.5 or more. Take the points with Maine, and then I did set a total here of a 137, so 136.5 or less in on the over, 137.5 or higher the under. You've got a Maine team that's not generating turnovers the same way that they did a season ago, but they're still playing nice, slow and controlled. 329th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Longwood is 62nd in the country, but that's a warped number because they played a double overtime game against Maryland Eastern Shore. It makes them look much faster than what they truly are. This is more of a mid-tempo team if you look at possessions per 40 minutes, and they've been led by 2 main scorers, JaQuai Hutchinson and Jonah Nazim. They've been able to combine for about 28 points per game, but this team has just really struggled from 3. Entering into yesterday, shooting 26.8% from 3-point range. They found their 3-point shot a little bit more yesterday, but man, you do expect a little bit of positivity there, though. This is a Maine team that they themselves, they do a good job with regards to their perimeter defense. It's been less than savory for them to begin the season, mainly because you don't have a lot of rebounding. You don't have a single guy that's giving you over 5 rebounds per game. Ace Flagg, that is your brother Cooper Flagg, along TJ Beal. They've been able to give you about 4.8 rebounds per game apiece. And Beal, he's a do-it-all guy that comes over from Southeast Missouri State, 16 points, 4.5 boards, a block and a half per contest. But I mean, this team is shooting less than 30% from 3-point, so that's been relatively miserable. And for Maine, they have not exceeded 65 points in a game all season long. I do think that there should be a little bit of positivity due in for them, but man, it's been a little bit rough with that regard. And with Longwood, I do think that they're going to be able to find their 3-point shot here a little bit as well, so I'm banking on a bit of positivity in this game. And for Maine, also went 15 of 29 at the free throw line against American yesterday. That's just not great. They do have a guy in Ryan Mabry who I think is going to be able to pick it up a little bit. He comes on over from Quinnipiac, where he was a nice scorer for them a few years ago, and he used to be a starter over at Miami of Ohio. Right now supplying the team with about 9.5 points, 3.5 rebounds, 2 assists per game. So set a line to where I'm a little late to 4.5 with Longwood, 5.5 or more. Taking the points with Maine, and then 136.5 or less in on the over, 137.5 or higher. The under 306, 507, 306, 508. It is Army, and they're going to be playing on some Manhattan. The Jaspers are a 1.5 to a 2.5 point favorite. 158.5 to 159.5 is the total. I'm in on the under. I set my total 153.5. Now Manhattan has been just absolutely despicable on defense. Right now, outside the top 355 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but it's an Army team that's about 217th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and they're outside the top 330 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They've lost pretty much 3 of their top 4 scores from a season ago. Ryan Curry is really the main holdover from a season ago. 11.5 points, 4 boards, 4 assists. He's been solid, but the team is shooting 27% from 3. I don't see a lot of positivity coming in for them. They have no size on low. They are bottom 3 in all of college basketball in terms of block shots per game. They're not doing the world's worst job on the glass, but still they're well outside the top 225 in terms of rebound percentage. You have only one player that's giving you more than 4.5 rebounds per game. That would be Tate Lazowski, who's only giving you 3.5 points to go, along with those 5.5 rebounds per game. And on the flip side for Manhattan, they've clearly been hampered by the fact that Will Cinder, one of their main top scorers returning from a season ago, has dealt with eligibility issues. Brent Ruppel has been out with injury as well, but you've got Jaden Winson, Devin Dinkins in the backcourt combined for 29 points per game, and it's a Manhattan team that's right now shooting 39.5% from 3-point range. As a matter of fact, out of your top 4 scorers, 3 of them, that includes Terrence Jones and Frazier Knight at the Roxborough, are both shooting above 40% from 3-point range, with Frazier Roxborough 6.5 rebounds per game as a 6'7" do-it-all sort of player. I think Manhattan is going to be able to buckle down a little bit more with their defense. Teams are shooting 39.9% from 3 against them, and they're a bad perimeter defense. I don't think that they're quite that bad of a perimeter defense. They're going to get dump trucked down low against a lot of teams, but again, you don't have a lot of rebounding with Army. Manhattan has been outside the top 300 in terms of defensive rebound percentage, so I do think that things seem down a little bit more for Manhattan. Their possessions per game, they're a top 50 team with that regard, but that's a little bit of a warped stat. They have to play that overtime game against Wagner, so that hurt that a little bit, and I do think that in the end, Manhattan finds a way to get the job done. Willing to lay up to 3 with Manhattan, and I'm in on the underside by total 153.5, 36.5-9, 36.5-10. Boston U is on the road against Northern Kentucky, and the Norse find themselves as 5.5 point favorites. Still on this game, 150.5 to 151, and for Northern Kentucky, I set them as a favorite of 3.5 points. So at 4+, I'm going to be willing to take those points with Boston U. Boston U, year in and year out, is one of the best rebounding teams in all of college basketball. And Northern Kentucky seems to be finding their bearings a little bit more after losing Sam Vincent and those main holdovers in the backcourt for the last few seasons. Dan Gresinger, he's a top returning scorer, and he's been rock solid, 17.5 points on 39% 3-point shooting. And Donovan Ode, who comes over from Cal State Fullerton, he's been very versatile in doing it all. 18 points, 4 boards, 2 assists, 2 steals, shooting 46% from 3-point range. But this is a Northern Kentucky team that is outside the top 250 in terms of ball security. They themselves, top 75 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but outside the top 275 in terms of rebound percentage as well, outside the top 200 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. So they can be added on the inside, and that's where I think the Boston U is able to hold in there. And now for Boston U, they've got a little bit more around the perimeter. Michael Air McNair last year shot 40% from 3 this year. He's given you 15 points, 4 boards, 3 assists, shooting 52% from 3-point range. You've had Sam Hughes be able to supply 41.5% 3-point shooting. He's supplying the team with about 11 points per game. And Ben Defty, he's a true 7-footer. Didn't really get a lot of run last year, but he's been actually giving out 2.5 assists per game to go along with his 12.5 points, 7 rebounds per game. This is traditionally a Boston U team that plays very slow, very controlled, and they are right back there this year. They are currently 358th in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game. Northern Kentucky is typically a little bit more of a control team as well. They're about 187th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. I do think the Boston U is going to do a nice job in terms of slowing this game down. I set a total here of a 137.5. This is a Boston U team that I recognize that they've been leaving a little bit of something to be desired on the defensive side of things, but I do think that they're going to be able to get this thing slowed down. And right now, Boston U allowing teams to shoot 40.6% from 3-point range. I think that there's a little bit of normalization to be had there. So I'm going to be in on this total under, and I do like the points here with Boston U. 306-511, 306-512. Louisiana Tech is playing against Alcorn State. This is a game that's presently off the board because these two teams played yesterday, but that said, I've got my handicap. I did set Louisiana Tech as a 12.5 point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay up to 12 with them, 13 or more. Take the points with Alcorn State, and then I set a total of a 134.5. At 134 or less, in on the over, 135 or higher, the under. You've got a Louisiana Tech team playing a back-to-back that that is one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball. For Louisiana Tech, 269th in terms of total possessions per game. Alcorn State has been looking to gun it a little bit more. Alcorn State, about 182nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and they got Jake Morton, who was the assistant over at Florida State, new head coach. His first win yesterday with the way that they were able to take down Indiana State, but still have to have a lot of fear with this Alcorn State team down low entering into the day. On Friday, they were outside the top 300 in terms of two-point shooting percentage on both offense and defense, in terms of rebound percentage, so they just don't have a ton down low. You've got Shane Lancaster, who was able to give 11-plus points per contest entering into yesterday. Nobody was giving the team over 4 rebounds per game. Nick Woodyard right now leading the way with 4 boards per contest, so that's going to be an issue here against the Louisiana Tech team that they're very much looking to knife the ball inside. Louisiana Tech has left a lot to be desired in terms of their three-point shooting, but for Louisiana Tech, I do think that even though you lose the Bacho man and Daniel Bacho from a season ago, that they're still going to be a rock-solid team down low. That's shown by the fact that they're a top 75 team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. You've got Caden Cooper and Scooter Williams in the backcourt combining for about 20 points per game. And you should see some positivity with the fact that they entered into yesterday shooting 23.6% from three-point. Cooper gives you 7 rebounds per game. Avery Thomas, 8.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. Kylan Housey has been able to give you about 5 rebounds per game. So this Louisiana Tech team doing a great job in terms of pulling in their second and third chances, top 55 team in terms of rebound percentage. Now, their free throw shooting percentage being below 60%, that is a big giant issue, but they do a nice job in terms of being able to D you up. So I do think that even though Alcorn State is going to be looking to run, Louisiana Tech going to be able to control the tenor of this game and just win with their defense and their low post play. I'm willing to lay up to 12 with Louisiana Tech. 13 or more, taking the points with Alcorn State. 134 or less, in on the over. 135 or higher, the under. 306-513, 306-514. You've got Southern, and they are on the road against Northwestern State. The Demons are a 1.5 to 2.5 point home underdog. 148.5 to 149 is the total. Set a total of 144.5. I do like the under. Now, Southern is a top 100 team right now in terms of total possessions per game, but that's a warped set. You play a double overtime game in Washington against Huskies, and that causes that to go northward a little bit. And for both of these teams, they both have been despicable on defense, outside the top 330 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Southern, last year was very much wholes greater than the sum of its parts with them. Now you've got Michael Jacobs, who's really been able to ascend. He's done a nice job supplying the team with 22 points per game, but he's not getting a lot of help from his friends. With A.J. Barnes right now dealing with an injury, he has not played since the Marquette game. That's a little bit of an issue. You've got nobody else other than Damari Jones, who's giving you 10.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game, giving you more than 10 points per contest. Now, I do like what Malik Agewald, who comes over from Massachusetts, has been able to give the team down low with about 7.5 rebounds per game, but it's still a Southern team that they are allowing a lot of second and third chances outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' rebound percentage, and I do think that for Northwestern State, they're going to do a little bit of a better job of being able to keep it clean. Both of these teams have been well outside the top 200 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but you got Mike Thomas back for Northwestern State from a season ago. He's been the head of the snake, 18.5 points, 2.5 assists per game. Omar Agbola is the only other guy that gives you over 10 points per game, and he's only been able to supply 10 points per game. But for this Northwestern State team, they've been able to do a pretty good job in terms of taking care of the ball, about 12 turnovers per game. Neither of these teams have been necessarily doing a great job in terms of sharing turnovers, which is strange for Southern. Southern was a top 50 team last season in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. You should see some positivity with the fact that Northwestern State allowing teams to shoot 40% from three. They weren't a great perimeter defense last season, but they're a little bit better than this, and I do think that for Northwestern State, they're going to be able to get a little bit more down low in this game. They've right now been searching for that main rebounder. J.C. Riley has been able to give you about 4 rebounds per game along Corderick Turner, but I do think that they have the overall size to be able to do it, and Izzy Miles, who comes over from Tarleton State, he's been able to give this team only about 6 points per game. He should be able to help this team generate a few more turnovers, and what I think is going to be a sloppy game. Semi-total at a 144.5. You have a Northwestern State team that, by the way, lies here well outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game, so like the under, and I do like Northwestern State here. Outright on the money line, made them a 2.5 point favorite. 306-515, 306-516. You've got Monmouth taking on Lemoyne, and this is a neutral court game that's off the board because both of these teams played yesterday, but I've got my handicap. I said Lemoyne as a 6.5 point underdog. One will up to 6 with Monmouth. 7 or more, take the points with Lemoyne. 150 or less, I like the over. 151 or higher, the under for Lemoyne. It's been a little bit up and down. It's not a team with necessarily tremendous size, but it's better than what it has been in past seasons because they bring in a transfer from Texas A&M, Corpus Christi, and Shiloh Jackson that's finally been able to give you that nice post presence that they've been looking for. About 13 points, 8 rebounds per game. Trent Mascara has been able to headline the backcourt, give you about 14 points per game. And then Ja'Kai Sanders is someone that I really like. Comes over from St. Peter's, all sorts of good versatility. 10.5 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point. It is a Lemoyne team that needs to clean things up. They're outside the top 3 in terms of ball security with about 15 turnovers per game. And they've been the victims of a little bit of bad luck. Entering into yesterday, teams were shooting over 42% from 3-point against them. This is not going to be some sort of a great perimeter defense, but they're better than that. And for this Monmouth group, you've got a team that is shooting it quite decently from 3-point range. They were able to go off yesterday. They had themselves a nice performance against Ball State, and you've got Justin Ray, who's right now shooting over 50% from 3, supplying the team with 14 points per game. I like Jason Rivera Torres. He spent some time over at San Francisco and Vanderbilt, where he saw some good minutes, and he's given this team a lot down low with about 8.5 rebounds per game. But just like last year, they're outside the top 3 in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage, and Monmouth has been incredibly sloppy with the ball. They're outside the top 3 in terms of their total turnovers on a per possession basis as well, and they're giving up a lot of second and third chances outside the top 320 in terms of defensive rebound percentage. That should give Lemoyne some nice second and third chances, and these are two teams that they're not going to be playing really slowly. They're not really going to be pushing tempo either. You've got a Monmouth team that entered yesterday, a relatively mid-tempo team for Lemoyne in terms of total possessions per game, more around about 211. So this game, I sit with a total of 150.5, 150 or less, and on the over 151 or higher, the under end with Monmouth will lay up to 6 with them, 7 or more, taking those points with Lemoyne. 306-517, 306-518. High point hopes would not be a low point as they play off to Western Carolina. Western Carolina is an underdog of 18.5 points, and your total is 160.5. And with High Point, I did set them as a favorite of 16 points. So I'm going to be willing to take those points with High Point. This squad is not necessarily going to be pushing a lot of tempo now. They're playing a little bit more quickly than they did a season ago. They have the coaching change, so they did say in-house for the coaching change, so it's not a massive fundamental difference or anything like that with what Flynn Cameron is doing compared to what Alan Huss did a season ago. But last year this team was well outside the top 250 in terms of total possessions per game. Right now they're more around about 169th in the country, so relatively middle of the road there. And Western Carolina has been a team that's been looking to push tempo, but the turnovers over the last 2 seasons have been just very costly to them. Currently about 80th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Now, High Point, a top 35 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. You've got Cameron Fletcher, spent some time over at Xavier and Florida State, supplying 18.5 points, 8 boards, shooting in the mid-30s from 3. And High Point, they're shooting 35% from 3. That's relatively maintainable. Vincent Brady is someone that has been dealing with a little bit of injury, so once you get him back in full force, that'll be helping out as well. Chase Johnson has been with the program for multiple years. One trick pony. He doesn't do anything other than pop threes, but is right now shooting 42% from the outside, and this team just does a nice job of being able to keep things clean. They're a top 20 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and they've been a good perimeter defense over the last 2 seasons as they're allowing teams to shoot less than 30% from 3-point. But I do think that this is a Western Carolina team that's going to be looking to just really punch it down low a little bit more. For Western Carolina, you've been able to have Marcus Kell in the system for multiple years. He and Court Stansberry combining for a little bit over 10 rebounds per game between the two of them, 26.5 points per game. And then Julian Swarmo began his career over at Gardner-Webb. He has been very solid in terms of being able to dole things out with 3 assists, 14.5 points, shooting 37% from 3. And Talon Petaway, he's been a nice off-the-bench sort of sharpshooter, shooting 42% from 3-point. Again, the big thing for Western Carolina, 15 turnovers per game. They need to shape up there. High Point, not necessarily a team that's going to be seeking out a whole bunch of turnovers or anything like that, and I do think that allows this Western Carolina team, who's been a top 100 team in terms of rebound percentage, to be able to hold in there. I set my line at a 16. Going to be willing to take those points with Western Carolina. Do things are going to be a little bit sloppier in this game, so set a total of a 156. I like the under. 306-519, 306-520. Harvard, this Marquette's play host to Bryant. Bryant is an 8.5 point underdog. 140.5 is the total, and did set Harvard as an 11.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it. I know that Harvard got it taken to them a few days ago against Boston College, but that said, this is a Bryant backcourt that is right now in a lot of, shall we say, a work in progress. Right now with Bryant, you've got Tim Radowski, who he comes over and he's been able to get the team about 12.5 points, 3 boards. He's been all sorts of versatile for them, but you really just don't have that main point guard for this team. That has led to some very disjointed offense. Bryant is right now turning the ball over 15 times per game, outside the top 3 in terms of ball security, outside the top 325 in terms of generating turnovers, so they've been losing that turnover battle, and they're shooting less than 26% from 3-point. Defense has not been bad. Top 200 team in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. You've had Ashley Sims, that's a man's name, being able to give you about 6.5 points, 4.5 boards, 2 assists per game, but You really don't have anyone that's consistently shooting threes or shooting above 33% from the outside. And for this Harvard team, they, in terms of offensive efficiency, are a top 150 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They bring back their top 3 scorers from a season ago. Thomas Beatty's the second who's been able to give you 12.5 points per game. Right now, shooting 66% from 3. That'll go downward. Chandler Piggy's a little bit of a do-it-all guy. 3.5 boards, 4 assists, 2.5, 14.5 points per game. And then Robert Hinton has been able to give you 14.5 points per game as well. This team has been struggling in terms of pulling in their offensive rebounds. They're outside the top 350 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that do result in an offensive rebound. So you can use a little bit more of Keenan Parrish, a true 7-footer, who's right now only giving you about 2 points, 1.5 rebounds per game, as this team does not really go too far outside their main rotation of about 6 or so guys. So getting back Austin Hunt in that backcourt is very big. But for this Harvard team, they do a nice job taking care of the ball, about 11.5 turnovers per game. They've been guarding the 3-point line. Okay, they get a little bit bludgeoned down low, but still, they're not allowing a lot of second and third chances to their opponents either. So interesting circumstance here. I do think that Bryant heats up a little bit from 3-point range, but do think that Harvard finds a way to get the job done against a Bryant team that just is a work in progress with that backcourt. And it's a Bryant team that it feels like they're not going to be shy to run. Not like they're going to be playing at warp speed or anything like that, but about 240th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Harvard has been very slow and controlled at 352nd, but do think that they execute on offense. Set my line at a 143.5 with regards to total, in on the over, and I'm going to lay up to 11 with Harvard. 306-521, 306-522. UMBC is playing us to Delaware State, and Delaware State is going to be finding themselves as a sizable underdog here of 11 to 11.5 points. On this game is 147.5, and say UMBC as a 13-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Delaware State loses to, I believe it was Virginia State, a non-Division I team a few days ago. Now, those teams out there that are HBCUs at the Division II level are actually quite rock solid, and I know that there is a conference, I think it's like the SIC or something like that, that is very rock solid that Virginia is a part of, but that's a bad loss that you can't take. And for the Delaware State team, they're a work in progress. They lose pretty much 5 out of their top 7 scores from a season ago. Now they've got the Ponceation and Ponce James, who's been able to give you 12 points, 4.5 assists. He's been rock solid last year, shot over 40% from 3, down to less than 30% this season because he's on much higher volume. But for Delaware State, they're having a tough time with regards to turnover battle. They're outside the top 250 in terms of taking care of the ball, and they're just not getting to the free throw line. They're outside the top 340 in terms of free throw attempts per game. Now they're doing a great job of not allowing a lot of offensive rebounds, but that's because teams are just draining the first shot. And for UMBC, this is traditionally a team under Jim Ferry that is really looking to push tempo. They have not been doing really any of that thus far this season, as this is a UMBC team that all of a sudden is down below the top 200 in terms of total possessions per game. As a matter of fact, 276th. And for Delaware State, this is traditionally a team that they do look to run a little bit more. They're more around about 200th right now in terms of total possessions per game, but for UMBC, they've got their ace in the hole, Ace Valentine. He returns from his season ago. He's been the main point guard and has doled out some good, clean offense. Not necessarily too much of a score, but 10 points, 4.5 boards, 5.5 assists per game. This is not a UMBC team that's going to be physically imposing down low. You really don't have much size outside of Jose Roberto Takarin, who's only been able to give you about 3 or so rebounds per game. But Josh Odawano, he began his career over at Columbia. He's been able to give you about 4.5 boards per game, but it's dealt with a little bit of injury. You've got Jalil King, who's been able to give you 13.5 points per game. He's been the main scorer for the team, but with Odawano, he should be good to go in this game, so getting him back, that provides a little bit of a boost for the team. And then DJ Turn It Up Armstrong already has 2 buzzer beaters here this season. He's been able to give the team 12 points. His 50% 3-point shooting, I don't think is going to be sustainable, but for UMBC, they've been much better with their perimeter defense as well, allowing teams to shoot less than 32% from 3-point range. And for UMBC, they need to clean up the turnovers. They're outside the top 300 in terms of ball security, but again, this is a Delaware State team that's not doing a great job in terms of generating turnovers themselves. So I did say UMBC as a 13-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. Set my total at a 151. I think that UMBC is going to be looking to go a little bit more up-tempo, and I think that they dominate and get a lot of second and third chances. So do like the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay with UMBC. 306-523, 306-524 from the Palestra. You've got Merrimack and Hofstra doing battle. No number is up on this game because these 2 teams played yesterday, but I've got my handicap. Set Merrimack as a underdog of 7.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay up to 7 with Hofstra, 8 or more taking those points with Merrimack, and set a total of a 136.5, 136 or less, in on the over, 137 or higher, the under. Got to pair of teams here that are really interesting to say the least, because Hofstra was a low-tempo team last season. They become more of a mid-tempo team this year. Entered into yesterday 90th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Merrimack about 296th in terms of total possessions per game, but Merrimack year in and year out, this is a team that's in the top 20 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, but they just haven't generated those turnovers this year. They've been a pretty pedestrian team in terms of generating turnovers. They're still not a good three-point shooting team. I think they're better than the 4 of 28 from three-point range that they shot yesterday, but Andres Marrero was a high 33-point shooter over at LaSalle a few seasons ago. He's given this team about 10 points per game, but he's shooting less than 30% from three-point range. Ernest Shelton has had to be the head of the snake. He's come up from the non-D1 ranks. He's been able to supply the team with about 16.5 points per game. He's shelling out about 3 or so rebounds per game, but again, you need a little bit of help around these guys. You've had Todd Brogna be a little bit of a disappointment thus far this season. He's right now only giving the team about 5 points per game after he was a double-figure scorer over at Stonehill a season ago. And on the flip side, for Hofstra, it's all about the Cruz Davis, who's been able to give you over 16 points per game. Love what he's able to bring to the backcourt now. It's a Hofstra team that's not going to be generating a lot of second and third chances on the glass, so you do have Victory Onitu, who's been able to give you about 9 rebounds per game. Silas Sunday, he gives you about 5 points, 5 rebounds per game. He's a true 7-footer, has never really been a shot blocking machine or anything like that. And then Biggie Patterson, that's a great name, by the way. He's been able to give this team about 12.5 points per game. He's come over from Ione, and he's been able to give you quite a bit of production as well. It is a Hofstra team that has been turning the ball over a little bit more this year than they have in the past. They're turning the ball over about 12 times per game, but Preston Eadman has been able to give Cruz Davis some nice help in terms of the backcourt. He's been able to give the team 15 points, 5.5 assists, not necessarily a great three-point shooter, but do think that A.J. Wills, who he comes over after he was a pretty solid scorer over at Wyoming last year, shot 43% from 3. He's going to be able to find it a little bit more, and do think that Merrimack is going to have success slowing things down, but again, they're just not generating the turnovers like they have in the past. So 7 or less, 1 to lay with Hofstra, 8 or more taking the points with the Merrimack, 136 or less. And on the over, 137 or higher. The under, 36, 525, 36, 526. Another game that's off the board. This is Stetson, and they're going to be facing off against Southern Utah. This is from the great state of Pennsylvania. And right now with Southern Utah, I did set them as a 4-point favorite. 1 to lay up at 3.5 with them. 4.5 or more. Taking the points with Stetson. And set a total of a 154, so 153.5 or less. In on the over, 154.5 or higher. The under, it's a Stetson group that is playing some really bad defense. They're outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis once again this season. As for Stetson, they've really sped up their tempo over the last few seasons. When they made the NCAA tournament a few seasons ago, they were one of the slower teams in all of college basketball. Now they're about 192nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Southern Utah does look to thunder it down. They're about 47th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and it's going to be very interesting because you've got a Southern Utah team that last year allowed the fewest 3-point attempts per possession of any team in all of college basketball. And Stetson, their lifeblood is bombing it from 3-point range. They're attempting pretty much as many 2-point shots as 3-point shots, and Stetson is shooting about 36% from 3-point range. They bring back Jamie Phillips from a season ago. He's been able to get the team 16 points, 2.5 assists, shooting 35.5% from 3-point range. And then the duo of Alex Doyle and Ethan Copeland have come in, and they've been rock solid. They're combining for about 19 points per game. You've got Doyle shooting 51% from 3. Copeland is able to shoot 41% from 3, but this is a Stetson team that is sure to be getting rocked on the glass. They're well outside the top 225 in terms of rebound percentage. They're outside the top 280 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. And this is a Stetson team that's outside the top 275 in terms of ball security. But you've got your warts with Southern Utah, mainly the fact that you're coached by Rob Jeter. But that said, this is a Southern Utah team that they're not too bad on the glass. They're a top 225 team with regards to rebound percentage. You've got a Holy Cross transfer in Drayden Faroa doing it all, 2.5 blocks, 6 boards, 11.5 points per game, shooting about 43% for 3-point. And Isaiah Cottrell, he used to be a starter over at West Virginia. He's been in college basketball for a long time, himself with injuries. 9 points, a block, 4.5 to 5 rebounds per game with Elijah Duvall, headlining things with about 12 points per game. But Southern Utah, very rough around the perimeter. They're not allowing a lot of 3-point shots, but they're allowing teams to shoot over 40% from 3. They're shooting just 29% from 3-point range themselves, and they've been turning the ball over about 14 times per game. So good old situation of something's got to give. I do think that Southern Utah, in the end, with a little bit more down low, finds a way to get the job done. 1 to lay up to 3.5 here with Southern Utah. 4.5 or more take the points with Stetson. 153.5 or less in on the over. 154.5 or higher. The under 36, 527, 36, 528. You've got USC upstate on the road against Nebraska. Nebraska's a 25.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 158.5, and I did set a total here of a 158.5. This opened up at a 159, so 159 plus, that is my buy point on the under. You've got a USC upstate team that last year they were really gunning it. They were one of the top teams in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and they have slowed it down quite significantly this season. They're about 200th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Nebraska's not looking to get overly out of sorts either, about 109th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, but for Nebraska, they should be able to dominate this game down low. I'm willing to lay up to 26 with them because you've got Rink Mass, who had 6'9", he just does a bit of everything for this unit, as he's right now supplying 18 points, 6.5 boards, 3.5 assists while shooting 48.5% from three. That'll be seeing a little bit of a downtick, but I mean, for Nebraska, doing a good job taking care of the ball, top 55 team in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. They're a top 125 team in terms of forcing turnovers on defense, and they've been able to do a good job in terms of being able to guard the perimeter. They're allowing teams to shoot a lot of threes. As a matter of fact, they give up the most three-point looks of any team in all of college basketball, but they're allowing teams to shoot just 30.5% from three-point range, and they've been really efficient down low, top 25 team in terms of their two-point shooting percentage. And for Upstate, I think that they're going to have a tough time matching up with that. Upstate just doesn't have a lot of size. It's a Upstate unit that right now is outside the top 175 in terms of rebound percentage, though they do have some guys that are really able to go bombs away from three, mainly Carmelo Adkins, top scorer with 15.5 points, 5 boards, shooting 48% from three-point range. Madison Benninger, he's been able to give you about 15.5 points. He's shooting 35.5% from three, but for USC Upstate, just still a team that's a little bit sloppier with the ball than what you'd like to see outside the top 175 in terms of ball security. They've actually done a good job in terms of cutting teams off from three. They're a top 175 team in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, but still have your warts with this USC Upstate team without having a lot of size down low. You got Jeff Martinez, who he comes over from Honduras, actually, 5.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, and you still have Kamani Gregory in the fold. He's been able to give the team 14 points per game. Do think that Nebraska executes well on offense, but I don't think you get enough possessions if this total goes to a 159 plus for the over. So at 159 plus in on the under, and with Nebraska, want to lay up to a 26 with them. 3-6-5-29, 3-6-5-30. Georgia Southern is going to be playing us Houston Christian. Houston Christian, a 6.5 to a 7.5 point underdog. Throw on this game between 151 to 151.5, and did set Georgia Southern as an 8-point favorite. So going to be willing to lay up to 7.5 with them. Houston Christian just not getting a lot going on offense. They really have changed their ways with Craig Doty now at the helm. They used to be a super duper up-tempo team, and they're currently 360th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Meanwhile, Georgia Southern 24th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. So you've got a clash of styles here, and I do think that things get slowed down quite a bit more. I did set a total of a 144. I'm going to be in on that under, but for Houston Christian, not been able to get a lot of good shooting on this squad as they're shooting less than 30% from three. They do return Elijah Brooks from a season ago, 14 points per game, but they lost pretty much 4 out of their top 6 scores from a season ago. You're bringing in DeMarco Bethea, who was over at East Texas A&M, but able to, at 6'8", give you a little bit of versatility, 9 points, 3.5 rebounds per game, but you're going to need to get a little bit more down low of this squad, as for Houston Christian right now, they're well outside the top 200 with regards to rebound percentage, and for Houston Christian, they're shooting 60% at the free throw line. That's just not going to cut it, to say the least. For Houston Christian, even though they play slow, the defense has not been great. They're outside the top 250 in opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, and this is a squad that they themselves have been turning the ball over about 13 times per game. This is Georgia Southern team that's been a top 100 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. It's a backcourt that has played with one another for quite a while, including having a boomerang transfer. And Tyron Moore led the team in scoring 2 years ago, played at UAB last year. He's back giving the team 12 points, 2.5 assists per game. And then you got Spud Webb along to Kavian White, who have been able to combine for about 27 points, 5 assists, 8 rebounds per game. That team that's going to really bomb it from three, other than Moore shooting over 40% from three. As a collective, they shoot 32.5% from the outside, but generating those turnovers is big. This is a team that's a little bit soft on the inside. They're outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and Alden Applewhite, who comes on over from Murray State, he's the lone guy giving you over 5 rebounds per game, 13 points, 5 boards, shoots in the mid-30s from 3-point range, but it's not as if you've got imposing size on East Christian either, so that should allow Georgia Southern to get the job done in what I think is a sloppier and slow down game. Semi-total 144. I like the under, and I do like Georgia Southern here, willing to lay up to 7.5 with them. 3-6-5-31, 3-6-5-32 was supposed to be Bellarmine versus Northern Illinois. According to the Twitter/X page of these two schools, this game has been canceled due to weather, so we go to 3-6-5-33, 3-6-5-34. UNC Wilmington, they're going to be playing against Gardner-Webb, and right now this is a game off the board because both of these teams played yesterday, but I've got my handicap set. Wilmington is now a 25.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 25 with them, 26 or more. I'm taking the points with Gardner-Webb, and then set a total of a 155.5, 155 or less. I'm in on the over, 156 or higher the under. Gardner-Webb, outside the top 340 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, outside the top 300 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, outside the top 300 in terms of rebound percentage, outside the top 300 in terms of turnover rate. Like, man, this is not great for them, to say the least. I do think that there might be a little bit of upside with them. You've got a guy in Jacob Hargreth who's been able to give you 6+ rebounds per game out there in the backcourt. You've had Jacob Hudson be able to give you about 11.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, but man, this team is rough, to say the least. They're allowing teams to shoot over 38% from three, and that's a downtick because Southeast Louisiana started out the game like 1 of 16 from three-point range, and they still weren't able to cover that game. So this is not great, to say the least. And now you go up against a Wilmington team that last year was a top 30 team with regards to rebound percentage. They've taken a half a step back this season, but I mean, still, they're doing a top 50 job in terms of offensive rebound percentage. This is a Wilmington team outside the top 200 in terms of total possessions per game, a little bit more slow and control, but you've got 6 different guys right now supplying at least 7 points per game. Noah Ross, along Nolan Hodge, they've been able to do a great job shooting over 40% from three apiece. Christian May, Madison Dewar, they enter from within the conference. They're combining for 24 points, 8 rebounds per game, and then the 7-footer Patrick Wessler comes over from Virginia Tech, 8.5 rebounds per game. Give me a lot on the offensive glass as well. It's a Wilmington team that's allowing teams to shoot less than 32% from three-point range, so they've been solid with regards to that defense. Wilmington not really going to force the issue in terms of generating turnovers, but I do think that they do a nice job of just being able to take it out of a Gardner-Webb team that's one of these sadder defenses they're going to find in all of college basketball. Wilmington not even up-tempo, but I think that they just put up a good number because Gardner-Webb just plays make it and take it sort of basketball. One away to 25 here with Wilmington, 26 or more, taking the points with Gardner-Webb, 155 or less, in on the over, 156 or higher, the under, 36-5-35, 36-5-36. Southeast Missouri State plays us at Lipscomb, and Lipscomb is a 1 to a 1.5 point road favorite. It's on game between 147.5 to a 148. I did set Southeast Missouri State as a 5.5 point favorite. I do like them here on the money line, and for Southeast Missouri State, this continues to be a top 100 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. As a matter of fact, a top 60 team. They do lose a lot of pieces from a season ago, including their main scorers like Teddy Washington and company, but you've had Luke Emeldover be able to come in, give you about 15.5 points per game. Braxton Stecker and BJ Ward have been in the program for quite a while. Ward has given you 4.5 assists per game, and Stecker has been able to supply 14 points per contest, but team is shooting just 27.5% from three. I don't believe that they're going to be a great three-point shooting team, but I do think that there's a little bit of upside here. And then Landron Blocker, who comes over from Louisiana Tech, I believe that his brother is currently on DePaul, giving you about 3.5 rebounds per game, shooting 40% from three, but in a little bit of a muted role. I think that they unleash him a little bit more. And for this Lipscomb team, you actually did have a few holdovers from last season. They did lose their coach in Lenny Egecuff, and Kevin Carroll was at the D2 ranks. He comes in, but I mean, it's been a bunch that's not necessarily been amazing with regards to their offense. They're outside the top 200 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, outside the top 200 in terms of ball security. Now, they have been a top 100 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and I mean, they've done a good job on the glass. You retain a pair of guys that stand right around 6'9" and 6'10", and Charlie Williams, who's been able to give you 8 points. He's only giving you 2.5 rebounds per game, but he provides the ability to pop it from three. And Grant Asman is right now shooting at like 6'10", 47% from three, 14.5 points, 5.5 boards. Love him. And then Marco Moraldo has been able to give you about 7 assists per game, so he's done a nice job doling it out, even though he's not too much of a scorer. But this is a unit that down low, they're outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. And I do think that with both of these teams playing strength on strength, I do think that Southeast Missouri State does a little bit better job of generating turnovers and finds a way to be able to get the job done. Southeast Missouri State, I did set as a 5.5 point favorite. I like them on the money line. Think that you're close enough for late game falling. Set a total of 149.5, so I'm also in on that total over. 3-6-5-37, 3-6-5-38. Arizona is going to be playing us at Norfolk State. Norfolk State is a 34.5 point underdog. 143.5 to 145.5 is the total. And for Arizona, I did set them as a favorite of 33 points. So at 34 plus, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Norfolk State. It's an Arizona squad that is still going to be looking to push a lot of tempo. That's just the system that they run, but they become a top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Right now, Arizona checking in more around about 160th in terms of total possessions per game. A little bit of byproduct of playing some slower teams here recently, so do think that that speeds up. In Norfolk State, they are playing at a snail's pace right now. Norfolk State 340th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. I think that they're going to be willing to speed it up just a skosh. As for Norfolk State, it's really not been working out well for them this season. It's an offense that looks a little bit disjointed, as you've been relying upon Elijah Jamison, who 2 years ago was a rock-solid scorer over at UW-Milwaukee, 14.5 points per game, and Anthony McComb, who comes over from Bowling Green and New Hampshire. He's been able to give you 17 points per game, but it's a very top-heavy team that doesn't necessarily have a ton in terms of outside shooting about 31% from three-point range. Now, they've done a great job in terms of giving themselves second chances. Top 75 team with regards to percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, which is impressive considering McComb is the only guy in the roster that gives you more than 4.5 rebounds per game, so they're doing it by committee. But now you have to go up against an Arizona team that has Toby Awako, who's been able to give you 10 plus rebounds per game off the bench. Jaden Bradley is not necessarily an amazing three-point shooter, and for Arizona it does not matter because he's able to just dole it out to his friends. As Jaden Bradley, Dakota Pete, they've both been able to give you about 15.5 points per game, but Anthony Del Rosso is shooting 38.5% from three. He's supplying the team with 10.5 points per game. He's not necessarily a big-time scorer, but Dwayne Aristode, he's been able to give you 7 points, and he's shooting 54% from three-point range, and it's an Arizona team that right now is just oh so deep. You've got 8 different guys. They're giving you at least 7 points per game. You've got Montevideo Crivas down low, giving you 7.5 rebounds per game. Arizona State is just absolutely dominating the glass. They're a top 20 team with regards to rebound percentage, and they are allowing teams to be able to get some good looks from three. They're about a middle-of-the-road team in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but they've been better in terms of generating turnovers as well. I think that Arizona is going to be looking to bump up that tempo a little bit more, so my total 151, I like the over. I do think that Norfolk State does just enough to be able to hold in there, though. Did set my line at a 33, so anything above a 33, I'm willing to take those points. With Norfolk State, 306-539, 306-540. American and Siena are going to be doing battle. You saw these teams in action yesterday, so that's why this game is off the board. And with American, I set them as a 2.5 point underdog. I'm willing to lay up to 2 with Siena, 3 or more. I'm going to be willing to take those points with American and then set a total of a 138.5. 138 or less. I'm going to be in on the over, 139 or higher, the under. It's a Siena squad that has been able to do a pretty solid job down low. They don't necessarily have the shot blocking that they did a season ago, but you just have good overall size. Like right now, your top scorer in Gavin Doty entered into yesterday with 15 points, 4.5 boards. He's a 6'5" guy that last year was a 40% three-point shooter. That's been down this year, and for Siena right now, they're shooting, entered into Friday, 25.5% from three-point range. We're going to see some positivity there with this team. You've got Justice Schultz and Brendan Coyle back from a season ago. They're combined for about 22 points per game. Schultz has been able to do all 5.5 assists per game, and it's a Siena squad that's been able to do a good job on the turnover battle as well. Top 125 team in terms of taking care of the ball, and they do not put teams on the free throw line cheaply. They're a top 30 team in terms of fewest free throw attempts allowed per possession, and for American, they've sped themselves up quite a bit this year. Last year, they were outside the top 350 in terms of total possessions per game. I think that they're going to get back to their roots, start to slow things down a little bit more as they entered into the day on Friday, 60th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and that just doesn't feel like it's this team. You do have a guy in Greg Jones who I like, who's been able to give you 12.5 points, 4 boards, 3 assists, nice versatility there, but for American, they're shooting about 32.5% from three. Not great, not terrible. The turnovers have been an issue. They always are an issue for the team. They're outside the top 235 with regards to taking care of the ball. Now, they've been a top 125 team in generating turnovers as well, and top 175 unit in terms of things down low. They have a positive rebound differential. They're allowing teams to shoot only about 48% on their two-point shots, top 175 unit in the country with that regard, but they are missing a lot of size from a season ago. Matt Mayock, he's one of the more versatile guys on the team. He's only giving you about 7 points per game, but has actually shot 50% from three-point range as a 6'7", do-it-all sort of player. Wyatt Nicetis has been able to do a nice job in terms of seeing bigger minutes this year. He's been able to give the team 12.5 points per game after he was a little bit of an afterthought last season, shooting about 48% from three. That's certainly going to be going northward, but I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a slow-down game. Got a Siena team that's outside the top 3 in terms of total possessions per game, and do think that American is going to be getting back to their roots a little bit as well, so 138 or less in on the over, 139 or higher the under. With Siena, willing to lay up to a deuce with them. 3 or more, take the points with American. 3-6-5-41, 3-6-5-42. Winthrop is going to be playing us to South Carolina State. South Kakalaki State is right now a 20.5 point underdog. Total on this game is between 161 to a 162, and with Winthrop, I set them as a 19.5 point favorite, so 20 plus, going to be willing to take those points with South Carolina State. South Carolina State is in a lot of transition. They pretty much lose 8 out of their 10 main rotation pieces from a season ago. That is a team that is very much built around being able to give you different looks, having all sorts of just depth in general, so that's been an issue, but they do retain one of their main facilitators in Jaden Johnson. Only give you about 7.5 points per game, but he's throwing in their 3.5 assists per game, and it is once again a whole is greater than some of its parts team. You've got only 2 guys that are averaging over 8.3 points per game. Cameron Clark, who's been out for half the season, he's been able to give you 10.5 points, 4.5 rebounds per game, and Owen Bronson Jr., he's been able to give you about 13 points per contest, and with Clark, he comes in from Cal State Bakersfield, meet for the Roadrunners, and he's returned in the last few games. He's been able to breathe a little bit of life into the team, and has been good down low at about 6'10", so that makes a big difference for the team. game, and with him off the floor, that's a big reason why they got dump trucked in their first few games of the season. And for Winthrop, you've got a nice go-to guard in Kareem Rozier, comes over from Duquesne, 14 points, 4 assists, shooting 43% from 3-point. Dalen Berry comes over from Charleston Southern. He's at about 14 points, 5 boards. I like what he's able to bring to the table. Winthrop has had a lot of turnover issues in recent years, and Rozier has been able to clean them all up. They're only turning the ball over about 9 times per game. Now, they have been slowing themselves down a little bit this season as well, but it's not like they're playing at a snail's pace or anything like that. 123rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and South Carolina State is a team that traditionally does like to push a lot of tempo right now. They're 77th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Cody Cluett, who comes over from San Diego, he's been able to give versatility at about 6'7", 10 points, shooting 35.5% from 3-point range. And for Winthrop, they're much improved with regards to their 3-point shooting, along with their free throw shooting. Last year, they were one of the worst teams at the line in all of college basketball, up to about 74%. It's not amazing, but that's marked improvement for them. And Winthrop, top 175 team in terms of generating turnovers against the South Carolina State team that has been pretty sloppy with the ball. But I do think that South Carolina State has gotten a little bit of a boost with bringing in their main big man from Bakersfield, and I do think that this is going to be an up and down game. Somebody told 165.5. I like the over and at 20 plus. I'm going to be willing to take those points with South Carolina State. 306-543, 306-544. Mount St. Mary's plays us Howard. Howard is a 3 to 3.5 point underdog. It's on this game between 145.5 to 146.5. Set the Mount as a 3.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 3 with them. Now, Howard is going to have the best player out there on the floor as Bryce Harris. He is just absolutely incredible. He had over 20 points in that game against Duke, and right now he just does not have a lot of help around him. As for Mr. Harris, he's been to be the top rebounder for this team, 7 boards, 22.5 points per contest. He's doling out 3 assists per game as well. Now, Cam Gillis, who comes over from the Patriot League, 8.5 points, 3.5 boards, and he has been able to give the team 4.5 assists per game, so he's doling out some pretty solid offense. But for this Howard team, they're outside the top 275 in terms of ball security. They have been able to generate about 16 turnovers per game, but much of that game against non-D1 teams, and this is a team that's just getting flattened on the glass because other than Harris, you don't have a single guy on the roster that's giving you over 4 rebounds per game. Danaeus Kavavicius, he's been able to give you about 3.9 rebounds per game. He's like the only rotation piece that stands above 6'6", so that's an issue. You got a Mount St. Mary's team that typically they do a great job on the boards. You lose the likes of Dola Adebayo and company, but 6'10" Luke McKeldin should be able to win that battle down low. 12 points, 6 boards per contest. They dealt with a few injuries, but Trey DeVue, who comes over from Western Illinois, he's done a nice job giving the team right around about 4 boards, 11 points per game. Now it is a Mount St. Mary's team that's outside the top 350 in terms of ball security. 17 turnovers per game. They have played a murderous row schedule that has led to that, and it's a Mount St. Mary's team that they should be able to do a nice job being able to grab some more second and third chances. Right now they're outside the top 300 in terms of offensive rebound percentage, but they go up against a Howard team that's allowing a lot of second and third chances themselves, and having a guy like Xavier Lipscomb in the backcourt who's been around the block. He's been playing since the COVID years. 9.5 points, 5.5 boards, 4.5 assists. I think that versatility wins out here. One to lay up to 3 with Mount St. Mary's. Howard has really slowed themselves down. They're actually now outside the top 275 in terms of total possessions per game. Mount St. Mary's all sorts of sloppy with the ball. Semi-total at a 141.5. I'm in on the under. 306-545, 306-546. Lafayette is going to be playing against Ball State. This game's off the board because both of these teams played yesterday, so I've got my handicap. I set Ball State as a 1.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 1 with them, 2 or more. Take the points with Lafayette. Set a total of a 139.5. 139 or less in on the over, 140 or higher the under. Ball State playing at a very slow and controlled pace, outside the top 285 in terms of total possessions per game. Meanwhile, you've got a Lafayette team that they really never gonna. They're actually playing a little bit faster for their standards, about 205th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And for Ball State, the lifeblood of this team is generating turnovers. Top 30 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, as they brought in quite a few transfers that just really fit that system. Devin Barnes, who was over at UTEP 8 seasons ago, he's been able to give the team 10 points, a little bit over a steal per game. You've had good production out of Armani Ziegler, comes over from St. Peter's, about 12 points, 4.5 boards, 2.5 assists, some nice rough and tumble there for Ball State. They're only shooting about 30% as collective from 3-point range. I expect that to go upward a little bit, and they're getting it taken to them down low. They're outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and in terms of rebound percentage, they're well outside the top 275 with that regard as well. Not as if this Lafayette team is batting down the hatches down low, though. It's a Lafayette team that they themselves are outside the top 250 with regards to rebound percentage. They lose their 7-footer Justin Vanderbond from a season ago, and right now you've only got one guy, that would be Christian Humphrey Rembert, who's been able to give you over 5 rebounds per game, 5.5 points, 5.2 4.2 boards out of Humphrey Rembert. And then you've got Caleb Williams, Andrew Phillips, who have been the head of the snake. These two guys combining for about 34 points per game. They're both giving between 4 and 4.5 rebounds per game, and they're combining to shoot about 40% from three. Everyone else, like Mark Butler, Ryan Pettit, who have been in the system, they've just been really ancillary guys. It's a Lafayette team outside the top 225 towards ball security, so Ball State should be able to generate some turnovers here on Lafayette. They themselves right around about 300th in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, so I do think that in a battle of relative equals, the Ball State ability to be able to generate turnovers wins out here. 1 away up to 1 point with Ball State, 2 or more taking the points with Lafayette, 139 or less, and on the over 140 or higher, the under 3-6-5-47, 3-6-5-48. Central Arkansas is on the road against East Tennessee State. ETSU is a 10.5 point favorite. Tonight's game, it is 143 to 143.5, and when it comes to ETSU, I did set them as a favorite of 12.5 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay the number here. With Central Arkansas, this is a unit that has been much improved from where they were the last few seasons. Like, this has been a just deplorable and awful program, and now they bring back Cameron Hunter, and Cameron Hunter, he's been able to do a very impressive job in terms of leading this team after he did so during, I believe it was 3 years ago. He's been able to give the team 15.5 points, 2 assists per game. It's still a little bit of a disjointed offense with 13 turnovers per game, but they've been much better on the boards, a top 225 team with regards to rebound percentage. Cole McCormick, he's back for season number 2. Last year, he was a little bit more of a scorer than this year with about 8 points and 4 rebounds per game, but still, you got Javion Guy King, who he missed all of last season. He's been able to come back, give this team 8.5 points, shooting 39% from 3. Team leaves something to be desired with their 3-point shooting at 31% from distance, but after they got just completely tattooed from the outside, they have been a upper half of college basketball team in terms of 3-point shooting percentage allowed, but ETSU, I think, is going to be able to win that battle down low. They do lose the likes of Karan Boyd and company, but this is a Brooks Savage team that always does a pretty rock solid job down low. They bring in Cam Morris from UMass Lowell, who's been able to give you 14.5 points, only about 3 rebounds per game. That should be going northward, but good versatility. So he's currently shooting 50% from 3-point range. It's an ETSU team that has also been able to do a much better job in generating turnovers. Top 50 unit in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. That hurts the Central Arkansas team. ETSU is also allowing teams to shoot less than 30% from 3, and ETSU is just pile driving the ball down low right now. Top 45 team in terms of 2-point shooting percentage. Brian Taylor comes in from SIU Edwardsville, 14.5 points, 4.5 boards, a steal and half per contest, shooting 40% from 3-point range. I do like the game of Jalen Smith right now. He's only shooting about 30% from 3, but over at North Florida last season, he did a nice job running that show, giving the team 5.5 assists, shot in the mid-30s from 3-point range. I do think that ETSU does find a way to get the job done, and for Central Arkansas, they're looking to tame down that tempo a little bit. Now they're closer to about 100th in the country in terms of total possessions per game instead of playing at warp speed, and ETSU, relatively controlled team, 281st in the country in terms of total possessions per game, so going to be one to lay with ETSU. Did set my total at a 144, and I think that it's just sufficient enough for the over, so like the over to go along with ETSU. 3-6-5-49, 3-6-5-50. Eastern Kentucky is going to be playing us with Wofford. Wofford is a 1-point underdog / a 1-point favorite. We've got dueling favorites at these books, and total is between 160 to a 161. Did set a total here of a 151. I'm going to be in on the under. You've got a Wofford team that is relatively mid-tempo. You've seen Coach Giltner come in, and he's been pushing a little bit more tempo. He used to be a guard over at Wofford, so he very much knows the system, so they haven't deviated too much from it, but I'm going to lay with Eastern Kentucky. I did set them as a 5-point favorite. I do think that with Wofford learning a little bit of a new system and facing off against an Eastern Kentucky team that year in and year out is a top 75 unit in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, that's going to hurt a Wofford team that they are not going to win the turnover battle. Wofford is outside the top 320 in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Now, with the coaching change, they really didn't lose anyone in the offseason. You've been able to get great production out of Niles Malchowski, who comes over from Central Florida, 12.5 points, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range, but it's been Kamir Holmes who stayed with the system. He was a little bit more of an ancillary guy a season ago, and he's taken a massive stride forward. 17 points, 5.5 boards, 2.3 steals. He's shooting 37% from 3-point range, so I have to love what he's been able to bring to the table there. And then on the Eastern Kentucky side of things, they're right now more of a middle-of-the-road team in terms of generating turnovers. I think that system is going to be cranking up a little bit more, but this has been a team that has been able to be a top 75 unit in terms of offensive rebound percentage, headlined by Montavious Myrick, who's been able to give you 13 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. Not a guy that's going to pop it from 3. And Turner Buttrey, throughout his career, has been a 36+% 3-point shooter. Right now, he's shooting 18.5% from 3 with his 10.5 points per game. That's going to be going northward for ETSU. This is a unit that typically gives up a lot from 3-point range, or right now allowing Putis to shoot 34.5% from 3, but I do think that for the squad, they're also going to be able to get some good production out of Vaughn Cranford. Comes over from St. Francis of Pennsylvania, 11.5 points, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range. Jalen Cooper has been able to shoot over 40% from three, and this team is finding some nice facilitation out of Buttery, who's been taking on a little bit more of a, shall we say, point guard role for this team, and I do think that they do find a way as a result to be able to get the job done here. Set by a line of 5. I'm going to be willing to lay with Eastern Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky is a team that's not afraid to fly, but it's still a team that's been a little bit inefficient on offense. Still a team that does a great job of making things sloppy. So set a total of 151. I'm in on the under end. Wrap things up with 306-551, 306-552. Albany is going to be facing off against Fordham. Neutral court game in which Fordham is a 5.5 point favorite. So on this game, it's 138.5 and did set a total of 139.5. I do like the over. You've got an Albany team that's been all sorts of sloppy with the ball. Right now, they are outside the top 350 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Now, with this Albany team, they've been able to get a lot of production out of Mir and Lindsay. Entered into yesterday with 17 points, 4 assists per game, and you've had Okeke do a nice job being able to slide the team with about 10.5 points, 6 rebounds per game. He comes over from Florida National. He's been a big reason why the team has been able to generate some nice second and third chances. Top 175 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, but the 15 plus turnovers per game are very costly. Now, to the credit of the team, they do a nice job punching it down low. They've been a top 75 team in terms of 2-point shooting percentage. They entered into yesterday with teams shooting only 24% from 3-point range against them. Colgate was able to knock down a few threes, so that's going to be adjusted a little bit in. You've got a Fordham team that they're doing for some positivity with their 3-point shooting. Is this going to be an amazing 3-point shooting team? No, but at the same time, they should be shooting better than 25.2% from 3-point range. You've got DeJure Reeves, who was a really nice scorer over at Iona and Northern Colorado last 2 seasons, giving you 16 points per game, shooting in the mid-30s from 3. And then Marcus Green, who comes over from Hawaii, shooting 39% from distance, 7 points per game. These are like the lone 2 guys that are shooting above 25% from 3-point range, but you've got a team that's really doing a nice job grabbing second and third chances. 15.8 offensive rebounds per game. That's a top 20 mark in all of college basketball. Fordham is the top 75 team overall in terms of rebound percentage, and they're really limiting things down low. They've been a top 25 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage as well. Fordham has been really looking to take the air out of the ball, and Albany has been a little bit more of a, shall we say, middle-of-the-road team with regards to their tempo. 222nd for Albany in terms of total possessions per game. You got a Fordham team that's right now 349th, but that said, I did set my total at a 139.5 because I do think that this is going to be close enough for late game fouling. I do think that you get that positivity with Fordham, and even if they don't hit the first shot, they've got second and third chance looks, and Fordham only turned the ball over 10.5 times per game, top 150 team in terms of that efficiency. So I do like Fordham here. I set them as a 7.5 point favorite, and I'm in on the over, set my total 139.5, and that'll wrap things up for the Saturday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via the 5-star review. And I'm coming at you guys every single day with picks and analysis on every game every day. So I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
You'll get more than you expect with McValue at McDonald's. So when you've spent too much on a night out, get deals on the after party. When you've got date night, get deals on favorites that'll make you their favorite. And when you've got family for the weekend, we've got breakfast.
Buy one, add one for $1. Now with Sausage McGriddles and other breakfast favorites. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with combo meal. Valid for item of equal or lesser value. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Pacifico is a Mexican lager brewed to be discovered. It's like fresh tracks on a powder day. Like that uncharted trail a stone's throw away. Like the perfect wave on a sunny day. Pacifico, find your own way. 21 plus, drink responsibly. Imported by Crown Imports, Chicago, Illinois.
When you give gifts, you like to knock them out of the park. Airwick Essential Mist Diffuser's chic design, long-lasting scents, and effortless setup makes it the kind of gift that feels complete the moment it's unwrapped. Perfect for your favorite dinner party host or that friend who loves a cozy night in. Plus, its cordless design means you can easily take this gentle fragrance with you from room to room. Airwick Essential Mist, ready to gift, ready to uplift.